Good. I'm glad he's happy.
Yeah.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'm Jack Frost, Chairman of the Metropolitan Utilities District Board of Directors, and I'd like to welcome you all to the committee meetings this morning, May 4th, 2022. This meeting is being live streamed from the boardroom at the M.U.D. headquarters building located at 7350 World Communications Drive, and a recording of this meeting will be uploaded to the M.U.D. website after the meeting's conclusion. Safety briefing. I'd like to invite our Manager of Security, Zach Valentine, to provide a briefing regarding a protocol for all individuals in attendance at the board meeting today in the event of an emergency.
Good morning, Zach Valentine, Security Manager. The boardroom is on the first floor here at the M.U.D. headquarters, and the normal entrance and exit is here at the back of the room where we entered this morning. There is an alternate exit right here on the side of the room that can be used on an emergency basis. On the other side of this door as well is our closest fire extinguisher, AED, and first aid kit should those items be needed. Should a medical emergency arise, our security desk will contact 911, and they will also escort the first responders into the room. Should there be a need to seek shelter for severe weather, we will also exit through this door into the hallway, which is our designated severe weather gathering point. Should we need to evacuate the building, we will also exit through this door between two immediate lefts out into the parking structure where we will take account of everybody. That concludes the safety briefing. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call.
Howard?
Here.
Kavanaugh?
Here.
Bigley?
Here.
Cook? Friend?
Here.
Frost?
Here.
McGowan?
Here.
Open Meetings Act. I would like to advise all those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall in the back of the boardroom. We will begin with the public hearing on the proposed updates to the billing price book, which will be presented by Manager of Financial Planning and Analysis, Stephanie Lemons. This will be followed by an invitation for the public to comment. Okay.
Good morning. I'm Stephanie Lemons, Manager of Financial Planning and Analysis. I'll be discussing the information behind tab 5 in your binders, which addresses the updates to the billing price book. There are 4 documents behind this tab. The first item is the presentation that will be displayed on the screen and will be the focus of the discussion this morning. The next item is the memo submitted to the committee outlining the changes being proposed. Behind that is the detailed list of the proposed prices. And finally, the resolution that you will be voting on in the regular board meeting later this morning. So starting on page 2, I would like to provide some background information on this process. The billing price book establishes prices for various services and materials that we provide to our customers and contractors beyond the monthly fees charged for providing gas and water to their homes and businesses. These prices are typically updated annually, and with your approval will become effective June 1st. Our pricing is generally structured to recover the actual costs of providing these services and materials. However, there are some exceptions. First, there are certain items that are not cost-based, but rather serve as fees that are intended to discourage undesirable behavior. An example of this is the unauthorized turn-on fee, which is a penalty for turning on service that has been disconnected for non-payment. There are also a few services that are intentionally priced below cost. One reason we have traditionally done this is to assist customers who are facing financial hardship. For example, the turn-on charge for collection accounts priority service is priced below cost. In this case, we are turning on service for a customer after it has been turned off for non-payment. And I'll talk more about this fee in a few minutes. So moving to page 3. This chart provides some context around the size of the revenue generated from the fees we are discussing today. In 2021, the district's consolidated gross revenue was $391 million. As indicated by the yellow slice on the chart, the revenue generated from the billing price book items totaled about $5.2 million, or 1.3% of total revenue. And although this is a relatively small percentage of total revenue, we conduct a thorough review each year to ensure that our pricing is accurate and that these prices are charged are reasonable. At this time, I'd like to take a minute to recognize Beth Van Tyker for her work on this project. Beth is a senior financial analyst in the accounting department. The accounting department coordinates this annual review, and we work closely with many others across the district who provide input on these services that they perform on a daily basis to review and update the pricing. Now we'll turn to page 4 to discuss the frequently billed services. The first item we'll address is the field services labor. Many of these services we provide are performed by field service technicians. So these labor rates are a component of several other prices throughout the book. We're proposing to hold the rate the same for these labor rates, with the base rate for 30 minutes remaining at $121 and the hourly rate after the first half hour remaining at $176. The proposal to hold flat is largely due to higher wages resulting from the annual general wage increase and progression increases, offset by lower overhead rates for benefits and other general administrative costs. Item number 2 is related to various charges to turn on gas and water services. Items A and B are referred to as regular turn-on fees, either scheduled or unscheduled priority. We're proposing to increase these rates 3% to $98 and $124 respectively. We have not changed these rates since 2019. The 3% increase will assist the district in recouping the increase in the field service labor rates over the last 3 years. Item 2C, collection accounts priority. This is the turn-on charge I mentioned earlier related to collection accounts. This price is below our cost, but will help reduce the burden on many of our customers who are experiencing financial difficulties. Therefore, we are proposing to hold this fee flat at $75. The next item is the price for installation of a 3/4-inch water meter with ERT. These meters are installed in newly constructed homes and are typically charged to the builder and not directly to the homeowner. The increase is largely due to higher material costs and an increase in labor costs due to the amount of time required to complete these installations. The last item is the fee for the tapping and inspection of a water main with a 1-inch corporation. We're proposing to leave this price unchanged at $439, with material costs offset by a reduction in the amount of time required to complete these taps. On the next slide.
Stephanie, excuse me.
Yeah.
Quick question. Do we try to charge our actual cost for these services? We don't try to make any money on them?
Correct. That's correct.
And help me out there on number 1, the rate for 30 minutes, field services, $120. I know we don't pay our field services that much money, otherwise I'd go to work for them, but is that an all-in cost? Does that include benefits, everything else that is anyhow related to their job?
Correct, that's correct. So it would include their hourly wage, their fringe rate. It also would include any general administration overhead, so time for supervision costs as well included in that. And then there's some travel time included in that also. So I think it's about 11 minutes of travel time that's included in that rate as well. So not just the time it takes to complete the work, but it also includes some travel time as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so on slide 5, I'd like to discuss a few of the more significant price increases. This is defined as those increasing more than 15% or more than $200. And the price increases are all driven by the rising cost of materials due to inflation and supply chain demands. Therefore, changes in prices year over year could result in increases or decreases in subsequent years. These taps require the use of fittings made of copper and brass, and the cost of these materials has increased significantly since last year. The higher prices we are paying for these products are consistent with published industry data such as the Producer's Price Index. So addressing these items specifically, which include those we recommend increasing by greater than 15%, some of which also exceed the $200 threshold. Item 1 contains pricing of a 4-inch compound meter with remote, which is installed by a plumber, and item 2 contains pricing of a 1-inch corporation. These are both prices we charge for the materials alone. Therefore, the price increases are directly related to the price the district pays to purchase these products. Item number 3 reflects the cost of taps on PVC mains on various main sizes. These prices include the cost of materials as well as labor for the field service technicians who perform this work. These increases are driven by the rising cost of materials. Continuing to page 6. Item number 4 reflects the cost of large water taps performed by our crews in the water distribution and construction divisions. These increases, which range from about 15% to 31%, are largely due to the higher cost of materials. Turning to page 7. This reflects prices we recommend increasing by greater than $200, but less than 15%. This includes 2 additional sizes of large water taps performed by our crews in water distribution and construction divisions. And as mentioned previously, these increases are largely due to the higher cost of materials. In addition, we typically report to you any new billing items being proposed. This year, we are not recommending any new fees to include in the billing price book. Finally, following board approval, we will place the revised billing price book on the external website with an announcement that the fees will change effective June 1st. This will allow our customers and contractors to review pricing in advance of the June 1st effective date. Do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, these prices seem kind of high, expensive. Do we get any backlash from contractors, people, residential people when we charge these services? Do they ask what's the basis for these charges?
I believe most of them are aware, but I don't know if Jason Stanek is on the line, and
Okay,
he can.
That's fine. It just seems like it's pretty expensive, some of these charges that we're increasing them by 15, 20%. It just seems like a contractor or somebody might say, hey, how come they're going up? You know, just like you'd ask at a grocery store or something.
Director McGowan, Mark Doyle, President. You know, when I originally came on staff, I did have the marketing department along with other things, and that's a great question. Yes, the answer is yes. You know, we do our best to explain them, and we also try to keep it out there that we are trying to recover our costs, and we haven't been for a long time, and we still aren't on some things. It's hard to keep up with trying to recover costs at the same time inflation and unexpected things like the supply chain issues that Stephanie mentions occur. But I would say the answer to the question is that we get out in front of this and we communicate with those folks that are subject to these costs and fees regularly, and we'll get a letter out, if I'm not mistaken. We'll get communications out as soon as possible after this meeting, okay, providing the board support, and we have really good conversations. And I would say that has, now this is me talking, that has kind of kept us from being too aggressive on some of these items in terms of recovering our costs. And as mentioned earlier, it's really important that we aren't going out and shutting people off and then turning them on and making the burden so much worse for turning them on that you just never quite get. And we hope you, the representative of the ratepayers, support that type of concept. So working with the builders and contractors, it's always a challenge, and you know, with our industrial and commercial water customers, you've been through this. When we raise rates, we have a lot of dialogue, and it's not always just us talking to them, it's them talking to us. But these things are really important. These are very customer facing. And Builders and Contractors are also raising their prices to the customers who might be buying homes, and they understand, they don't like it, but we try to be really upfront, really transparent, and explain these things, so.
Well,
And
I'm
then,
glad to hear we're being proactive.
Oh, very much.
We'll send a letter out saying, here's our
Yeah.
new prices and everything, so it's not a surprise.
yeah, and I know Joe doesn't have marketing, but do you agree? I mean, we always talk about, are we getting out there, are we communicating, are we getting in front of this? Because we will hear back.
Good morning, Joe Schaffer, Chief Financial Officer. The only thing I might add is, Director McGowan, I think you can't help but pick up the news. I mean, nobody likes this, but it's all around us. And I think that we have purchasing people that are really working hard to make certain they can minimize this. If anything, at times it's more, can we get the product, let alone what the price is. But the other thing I think that's important, that the kind of the pass-through nature of these costs, if they drop, and we hope we're seeing a temporary blip, you'll see a drop when these things drop. It's not, gee, we're going to keep him here because we reached that price point and now we can make some spread on the product. That's not what happens. Our hope is that next year when you see this, you'll see reductions. But it's a matter of how long it takes to get all the supply chain disruptions addressed.
Thank you.
And for the majority of our customers that aren't affected, we want them to know that we're not subsidizing these things, because this is market-based items. Yes, Tim?
And Mark, I've seen some over the years where there has been some reductions.
There has.
It's not the rule, but it does happen, which I'm glad to see. Like you said, we're not at that point, and we stay there just because we can.
No, absolutely correct. And we like to hold ourselves accountable in that regard. Is that good enough for now, Director McGowan? That
Yes.
is- Okay.
Any other?
Thank you
Yep.
for the answer.
And I have a question for Mark. I think it's important to review the dates. I can't remember them, but if you could specify the dates when we do not go into a shut-off during the winter. I feel that's a very key factor.
I know I can do it off the top of my head, but I don't want to misquote. Who's here? Stephanie Mueller, are you on the line? I'm putting her on the spot, I know.
Hi, good morning. Yes, I'm on WebEx, so thanks for the question, Director Howard. So the dates that we're not doing disconnections are mid-December through mid-January, essentially, during that time frame. But then we're on winter policy, which goes from December 1st through the end of March.
That's temperature driven.
Thank you.
It's date-driven and temperature-driven, so.
Yeah, you might want to explain
we-
that. Oh,
Oh, sure. So the winter policy, so the moratorium, the mid-December through mid-January, that is absolutely no disconnects occurring. And then the winter policy during early December through the end of March is temperature driven, and it's anytime the temperature is below 32 degrees. We're not doing disconnects during that time.
thank you so much. That's really helpful information.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions?
That was great.
Good.
It's like Who Wants
Okay.
to Be a Millionaire?
Thank you for your time today.
Phone a friend.
Now, is there any member of the public attending the boardroom today who would like to comment on the proposal? To the building price book?
You can never leave the board.
Construction and Operations. Senior Vice President, Chief Operations Officer Gina Langle will review the capital expenditures.
Good morning. Gina Langle, Senior Vice President, Chief Operations Officer. Behind tab 6 is our capital expenditures letter. Of the 5 items, I will just be covering a couple of them. To start out, under system improvements, as you can see, there is only one system improvement that is taking place right now, and that's in subdivision 2. It's due to some grading work that is being done out there. On page 2, under building plants and equipment, item number 3, removal and proper disposal of 3 odorant tanks and related odorant equipment at the LNG Town Border Station and 175th Town Border and Centers Town Border Station, and removal and proper disposal of 2 odorant sweep tanks at Springfield Town Border Station and at the 63rd Propane Air Plant. This is for $277,000. John Zellers will also be discussing this later with the bids and materials and contracts letter. Recently, Northern Natural Gas has built some odorizing buildings and equipment on their large high-pressure transmission gas that serves West Omaha as part of our distribution system, including the LNG plant. Excuse me, my voice is not working this morning. This has rendered much of the district's odorant equipment redundant and unnecessary. So reducing the amount of equipment will eliminate the labor required and the maintenance required for infrastructure on this. M.U.D. still pays for the odorant required at UTN's Town Border Station and our 3 peak shaving plants, because when we peak shave, we have to add odorant before we put that into the system. All right, and also on page 2, item number 4, I will be discussing the owner's representation and program management services for a construction manager at risk process to perform site improvements and renovation work for the existing construction center and to build the new construction center. And this is for $1,107,200. John Zellers will also be discussing this with his bids and materials contract letter in a little bit. The authorization is for funds to hire an owner's representative and program services for the construction manager at risk process being used for the new construction center and to renovate the existing construction center. At the April 6th, 2022 Board of Directors meeting, a resolution was approved for facilities management to utilize a construction manager at risk delivery system to perform site improvements and renovations for Construction Center 1, CC1, and at 63rd and Oak Street, and to build Construction Center 2, which is CC2, along Highway 133 and State Streets. It's estimated that this year we will spend approximately $162,000 of these funds, and the rest of it will be used in future years. This has been budgeted. An owner's representative will assist facilities management with reviewing the proposed project schedules and the budget funding for both projects to be adjusted and allocations as needed as we move forward through the procurement, the design, and the construction processes. There will be future CNAs that will come to the board to hire an architectural design firm and a construction manager. Are there any questions about any of these projects?
Gina, as I recall last month when we approved this, once Mark enters into an agreement and we have a contract with the owner's representative, they are at risk to perform at the level that we agreed to, and we don't have any risk for price increases or any benefit for price reductions. Is that right?
This is for an owner's representative to work with us in hiring the architecture firm and the construction management firm. And Mr. Zellers, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the construction manager at risk is the construction management side. So as we go through this process, we will start to come up with an amount that we believe that the construction manager will agree to, that they won't go above that price. Is that correct, Mr. Zellers?
Okay.
So yes, that is true, but this owner's representative is to assist us to go through that whole process. Are there any other questions? Thank you.
Director of Plant Engineering, Stephanie Hann, acceptance of contracts and payment of final estimates.
Thank you. Good morning, Stephanie Hann. Here we go. Good morning, Stephanie Hann, Director of Plant Engineering. I am fortunate enough to have the next 3 agenda items, so I will be brief on all 3. We're going to start with tab number 7, the finals letter. We have 9 finals this month, 2 plant facility projects, 3 water development projects, 3 gas IR projects, and 1 service contract. Items A and F have change orders associated with them, and so approving these finals also approves these change orders. I'd also like to touch on items G, H, and I. These are projects associated with our gas IR program. This is performed by Q3 Contracting, who is our gas IR partner. You'll notice that all these projects were significantly under the estimates, which is always a good thing, but we like to estimate a little bit better. So what we were doing on these is we didn't have all the information we needed from the city as far as how much paving needed to be replaced and things like that. So we were kind of going with the worst case scenario. When you start seeing finals like next year, we're going to estimate a little bit different now that we have a better feel for it. So those actual costs will be closer to the estimated costs. Any questions on that one?
I don't have a question, just an observation. I thought this was a great report. Of the 9 items, 5 were decreases, 2 were right on, and only 2 increases, so good job.
Well, thank you. Sometimes we get it right. Thank you. We appreciate that. I'll pass that along to my folks, too.
Director McGowan and the board, Mark Doyle, President, thanks for bringing that up. We have a lot of discussion before the board meeting, of course, on all of these items, and then they turn into letters. I'm very pleased, and Ms. Hand and I have had some good discussions about the decrease when we're able to get the mains outside of the concrete and the significant cost decrease that occurs because of that. And it was explained, and I understand that going into it, we're a little bit, I don't know if conservative's the right word, but we want to make sure that we don't surprise ourselves with the costs. And when we're able to keep working and get these mains outside of the pavement because of the design so far ahead, it's very significant. So we had some nice discussion about that, and since one of the board members brought it up, I wanted to double down and say that's really good work
Well, thank
on the
you.
team's part.
We appreciate
And
that.
everybody, even the contractors, I'm sure, appreciate it.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
So
Thank you.
for that.
We
Yeah.
appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
Moving on to tab number 8. We are requesting a change order for a joint contract with the City of Omaha. A joint contract, if you recall, we've been doing this for about 10 years with the City of Omaha. Our first one was in 2012. A joint contract is a little bit different than our regular contracts. How this works is the whole project is actually bid by the City of Omaha, and the water main work is a part of that contract under that city's general contract. This particular project near 16th and Nicholas, it's replacing all of the sanitary sewers, storm sewers, and paving. So it's a big project. It's like $26 million. The water work is underneath that for about $4.6 million. That's what our expenditure is. Our crews went out and did the gas work. That's all complete. And now the water work's being done under the general contract with the city. Joint contracts are definitely favorable for the district, because it typically it's cheaper for us. It's more economical because we don't have to do hardly any of the restoration or hardly any of the pavement replacement. And so that saves us quite a bit of money. In this particular case, Roll-Off Construction is both the general contractor and the water installation contractor. It's not always that way, but it is in this case. We're requesting a change order on this joint contract, which is different than other change orders we asked for. And the reason for that is since our contract is actually with the city, we ask for you folks' approval on this change order of about $140,000. If you folks approve it, then it goes to the city council also for approval because it is a joint contract. This particular change order, due to the city's timing and all that kind of, all those issues, we didn't think we were going to have to do too much boring on this project, but then we realized that some things changed in the field and we needed some boring money, so that's what this request is for. This particular main, I'd like to thank Masania for a few items that are interesting. There's actually 4 miles of pipe that's going to be abandoned on this project. There were 40 breaks in this area because most of the pipe was put in the 1890s and the 1950s. So we're really glad to be moving on and getting rid of it. Any questions?
So this is what we're up against. I mean, this is just, pardon me, Mark Doyle, President. This is just one section of our distribution system, and it kind of, everything's in this one. It kind of shows us the magnitude of what we're dealing with here in order to continue to invest appropriately to get the water distribution system into a position so it's going to go on for the next, well, till the end of time, really. So this is a really interesting project. It's well documented. Yeah, we need a little extra boring work, but it just shows another aspect of where we've gone where these joint contracts, some of the board members might remember when we agreed to work with the city on joint contracts, and it's not always in our favor. Now and then, we have to accept the fact that we'll have a higher bid on a water main because it's embedded in the joint contract. I don't know that this is the case. But $4.6 or $4.7 million worth of water work inside it, it's a big project.
It's big.
I can't thank you enough for your support on this, and I'll say patience, because we have so many things going, and I know Stephanie's going to talk about one of them in a minute here, and different aspects of how we're getting after updating, modernizing, and effectively and efficiently working the distribution system. That I'll stop there. This is really encouraging, and it kind of tells the story.
It does.
1800s, 40-some breaks.
That's what I like to hear is 40
Yeah.
brakes that we're replacing that. They had 40 brakes.
And the breaks don't get any better over time. We could have 80 in the same time frame going forward. I'm just guessing, but the
Right.
problem is we are just guessing.
That's
So,
right.
Good job.
Right.
That's
Thank
great.
you. Thank
I
you.
do have a quick question about this, and I'm
You
not
bet.
looking to get off into the weeds, but if you could kind of give me an idea, and I'm just reading from the change order that Mr. O'Brien submitted. 500 linear feet of horizontal directional boring is the purpose of the change order, as I understand it.
That's the
So
primary, yes.
It says in here that the original plan showed an 8-inch open trench method, and then it was discovered in the field that some of the 8-inch needed to be installed by directional drilling due to conflicts with an existing fence. This is a City of Omaha project, I get that.
Yes.
But am I reading into this correctly, that somebody put this plan together and didn't realize this fence was there? And then, I mean, how could you not know?
That's
It's not a lot of money, but it's $140,000, so how do you not know that?
a
I mean, not
great
compared to
question.
the whole project is what I'm saying, but could you
I
educate?
can. I absolutely can. Thank you for the question. The main had to get moved a little bit, and part of it was the city, it looked like that whole street was going to get ripped out, and it was all going to be able to just be open trenched, and so it didn't matter where the fence was at. Instead, they decided to keep traffic going partially, and so more things ended up being in the way. So they couldn't open trench it, they had to scoot over, and so then there were more conflicts out there than originally anticipated when we thought we could open trench it.
So the reason is because the original design, the pipe had to move from the original design. It wasn't because the fence was there, it was because the movement of the pipe from the original design to final had changed.
We maybe should have stated that a little bit better.
Okay. And I'm not being critical, I'm just trying to understand why we're going to spend $140,000 on something
Yeah,
that,
and this doesn't help. And we talked about this just a little. We probably talked a little more about, the cost of the change order. This is probably one of those cases where it is a disadvantage on this particular item because it's our cost.
Right.
But I would say probably the customers, the citizens of Omaha and the ratepayers of M.U.D., this isn't going to help, but probably are saving on the city side.
Well, and that's a great question. Actually, when we've seen some of our water IR partners, some of the installations have been about up to $2 million a mile. This is actually coming in at about $1.2 million a mile. So overall, it's a pretty good deal.
no, I'm not being critical, I just am trying to get educated so I can understand why this happened. And this is just another example I heard you say also because they wanted to keep traffic flowing.
Right.
So if it means that you want to keep traffic flowing, keep the road open, the design changed, multiple factors led into us having to pay an extra $140,000.
Correct.
But Director Friend, we appreciate the questions because I know we're both sitting here going, okay, yeah, we could have,
We could have
talk
done
about
better.
these pros and cons, especially under joint contracting, because the cost per mile far exceeds the 100.
Absolutely.
But didn't think to say that. So I like
Right.
these kind of discussions.
This
and
is
I know you
great.
do too.
This is great.
Yeah.
We love the questions.
You're very perceptive, I will say.
Any other questions on that item? Great, we will move on to tab number 9. We are requesting a pilot project with Murphy Pipeline Contractors for pre-chlorinated pipe bursting. And you will notice in your packet that this letter was written by Chris Thompson. Chris is on my team. I just wanted you to meet Chris. He's over here helping me out today. We are proposing a pipe bursting project. Well, this would be a pilot project. As you know, we have partnered with other water IR contractors, typically to do direct bury or directional boring of all kinds of different materials, ductile iron, PVC, HDPE. Our crews have actually been doing some pipe bursting since 2020. They did a project in 2020, another one in 2021. This is just a little bit different system. We're proposing to do this on contract. This would be pre-chlorinated, and it's HDPE pipe. Our crews have been doing PVC and not pre-chlorinated, so a little bit different system, very similar. Murphy Pipeline would be our next partner for this pilot. They're actually based in Florida. This is approximately a 1.25 mile project in La Vista. Like I said, it'd be HDPE pipe, would be pre-chlorinated, which means they lay it across the ground first and pressure test it and chlorinate it before they ever put it into the ground. And I'm going to show you a few pictures here in a moment. There is also bypass piping on this, which really helps our customers. And there's just overall less restoration. And so thanks, Jay, for bringing that up. Just wanted to take a couple minutes and just show you a few pictures so you know kind of what this looks like. As you're looking at the screen right here, this, you can see my mouse. This machine right here is the pipe bursting machine, and these are rods right here. So what happens is this machine pushes these rods through from right to left, if that looks the same on the screen, hopefully. It grabs onto then this cutting head, and this is the new pipe. So then it pulls the new pipe back through this way. So it's, oh, I'm sorry. Jay, can you go backwards for me? Thank you very much. So it's actually pulling this new pipe through. So you see these shards right here. That's actually the existing pipe that it was pulled through. So as this pulls through, this cutting head right here busts up the existing pipe and pulls the new pipe into the exact same location where the old pipe was.
It's amazing.
It's really pretty cool. This is, I was talking about bypass piping, and so this is what it looks like on the ground. You can see this happens to be HDPE, like 2-inch pipe that's across the ground. You can see how nice and clean the construction area is. This is actually a customer's home. They put a nice little ramp over here so the customer can still use their driveway. It's very less impactful. We also, it's less cost because we have less restoration to do also. This is a drone view. You can kind of see that. The insertion pit for the pipe bursting is all the way up here. The receiving pit is down here, and you can see, so there's a pit dug here and there's a pit dug up here. If this were a direct bury project where we were just installing pipe, we would pretty much have this whole street from curb to curb probably ripped up. And you can see how less impactful this is to the customers and the community. This is just showing you the machine so you can see how that kind of works. These are the rods right here that are being, actually they're being pushed through right here. This is the HDPE pipe that gets pushed through. This is all plastic pipe, so you can see what this employee right here is doing is he's fusing the pipe together above the ground. So these ends right here go into this machine. It gets melted, and then they get pushed together. So there's a good melt, and it makes a nice strong joint. All that happens above ground. Then they lay this all out, and it can be any place about 200 to 500 feet, a lot of times above the ground. Then it'll be chlorinated and pressure tested above the ground. And then in the next picture, you can see how then it gets pulled in. You can see how flexible this HDPE pipe really can be. Just slides right in there. You can also look at, you know, how nice the neighborhood looks. You know, we took out, in this particular spot, they're taking out a little bit of sidewalk, a little bit of grass, but it really keeps the neighborhood very cleaned up.
How long a pipe is that going in, did you say earlier?
It can be any place from about 200 to 500 feet at a time that they're pulling in. And we have seen some pretty favorable costs coming back on this right now. The initial estimates are coming back about $1 million a mile. We'll know more as the construction happens since it's a pilot project, but it's looking pretty favorable at this point. And again, thanks to Masa. He had given me some information of this particular project. Like I said, this was a 1.25 mile project. There were 52 breaks in this area in La Vista. And so that's why we're asking for this pilot project to give this a try and make it all new pipe. Go ahead,
Stephanie,
Mike.
does that pipe get brittle over time in the ground? It's pretty flexible there, and I'm impressed with that. But once it's inserted in the ground and lays there for years, does it get brittle?
Thank you, Director. Actually, it's cast iron pipe, and it does over time.
Are you talking about the HDPE?
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about the HDPE. Actually, it stays pretty flexible. One of the things that is interesting about HDPE, after you actually pull it in, you have to let it relax because it actually expands and contracts, which is kind of interesting. It looks odd. Actually, you leave it sit overnight and it'll expand and contract until it gets there. But from the indications we have right now, HDPE pipe does last a nice long time. The best estimates, we're hoping for 100 years.
What is the determining factors between the high-density polyethylene and PVC? Because doesn't PVC have a higher failure rate than HDPE does?
There are differences between the two. Were you asking the longevity? I'm sorry.
No, when you have a project and you can use either of those because they're both plastics, right? I think HDPE has a petroleum factor in it.
Correct.
So how do you determine which of those components you're going to use for that project? What are the determining? Is it soil? Is it?
Good question.
That is a really good question. I'm going to use the word, there's no free lunch. There's positives and negatives to each type of material. PVC works really good when there's straight runs. PVC can be kind of brittle, so if there's stresses on the pipe with PVC when you go to tap it, that's where we can run into troubles and may have some failures. HDPE tends to be more flexible, but then it's a little bit harder to tap. You need saddles, special saddles, and usually you want to fuse your saddles on. So it's kind of always a give and take. There's probably no, this absolutely should be a PVC project. This has to be a ductile project. There's always kind of some room for discussion.
How do they compare like price per foot if it's the same diameter interior pipe? Roughly. I'm not looking for today's exact price, but just curious.
Like between PVC and HDPE, there's not a ton of difference on like just materials costs. And a lot of it does depend on, supply chain issues and things like that. Right now, HDPE and PVC are pretty readily available, and the prices are similar. I couldn't quote you an exact amount, but we do know that they're close to each other.
Thank you.
The process here is what makes the difference.
Correct.
The pipe bursting process, and that's really neat. I mean, in simple terms, you've got a pipe in the ground and you're breaking it up and running a new pipe through it. Straight runs, like you said. Good questions, though. We've been, the last few years, we've had people, Massa and others around the country, talking to other utilities, seeing it in person. So we're trying some things.
Will this be our first one?
I'm going to let Steph answer and correct me. This is not our first pipe bursting project. Our crews, I went out and watched, our crews have gotten really good at this, and they're doing it as we speak? Or we got a project they just finished?
They had a project we just finished.
Yeah. Now we're looking at a third party so we can do it along. I'll say I like it that we do the same thing, so we are subject matter experts, and then we keep a better eye on our contractors. So now HDPE, I don't know how much of that have we done.
We haven't pipe bursted with HDPE
I didn't
yet.
think so.
But that is what this contractor typically does. They've actually been doing this for 40 years, so this is kind of their bread and butter. And so that's the reason that we as a team decided that this was a good way to go. They're good at HDPE. They've done over millions of feet, we know that, of this over the years, and so
What's
go with the straight.
What's the length of time for the project, start to finish?
Good question. On this one, they're estimating probably 8 to 12 weeks to be completely done, and if this were direct bury, it would probably be, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're probably in the 4 to 6 month range.
And
Yeah.
the disruption.
Yeah.
And one last question. What's the thickness of that pipe that is so flexible? What's the wall thickness?
HDPE. Chris, can you quote that for me? Do you know? I'm sorry, I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can certainly get it to
Just
you.
curious, because going in the ground is so flexible, I just kind of curious what the wall thickness is.
Some good pictures.
Is, Masa, are you on WebEx?
We'll get that for you.
That's fine.
I am.
Could you address that, please?
Sure. Good morning, Masania, Director of Infrastructure Integrity. The HDPE is a little thicker than the PVC. Just it's not as strong, but it is as flexible. It's much more flexible, as Stephanie mentioned. The wall thickness on it is about 1/2 inch.
Not as much as you'd think, right?
Right.
Hey, Masa, what is it for PVC, just in comparison?
Yeah, roughly a hair over 1/4 of an inch, where ductile iron's a 1/4 inch at those pipe sizes. And with the plastic pipes, the bigger pipe you go, they call it a wall thickness ratio. The bigger the pipe, the thicker the wall gets on the pipe. So we've installed 20-inch HDPE with a really high pressure rating that's almost 1.5 inches thick in our system. So it really varies throughout, and we've got the designers looking at that, what pressure are we dealing with at what location to get the right thickness on the plastic pipes.
Well, I applaud you all because we've come a long ways in 5 years. And I look forward to the future.
I do too.
All the new things we're doing.
And which leads me to my question, Steph. Thanks for this report, and Chris, great work, and Masa as always.
Thank you.
My question is, in the next couple weeks, no hurry on this, but we've got a number of these pilot projects out in the field right now. Could you just provide us with a summary of all the pilot projects going on with water infrastructure replacement, and just let us know the progress on that? It's fantastic with all these different things going on, but there's so many of them. I just want to make sure that we're kept abreast of what's been happening.
Absolutely, we'd be glad to do that.
Thank you.
You bet.
We're glad you asked, but you asked for it.
We can tell you.
This is one of those topics where.
Here's my softball to all of you. Here you go. Just like when I was a pitcher in baseball. Here's my fastball right down the middle for it.
And all these things are tied together. And this type of presentation, good news, it shortens up a little bit of my state of the district, because this it's not everything, as you mentioned, but it tells the story along with that previous topic of we do have a lot of things going. And what's really exciting is we'll look at something like this, whether it's our crews or this third party, we'll find out how many miles could be this way, and now we got a separate cohort or type of project, and then we divvy them out accordingly. But I think our crews were very excited when they did. In my opinion, I felt they were. I don't want to speak for them, but Chris, you probably know, the first pipe bursting project we did down in 16th, it was very exciting, and they moved. When they got going, there's nobody better at this stuff when they get it down. But it's new stuff, and it's exciting, so thank you. I'll stop now. Great presentation.
Yes, really good presentation.
Thank you.
Really educational, which I really appreciate.
Oh, thank you.
You said they've been doing this for 40 years. Is there any concern about this plastic leaching into the water at any time? I mean, that you hear about these things decades later after they've happened that you would have wished you'd known. So has that been a consideration at all?
Great question. Thank you so much for that. Actually, it has. And we've had all of our water quality folks looking at it, Chris Fox in water quality, Mike Koenig and all of his folks. And they've looked at all the data, done their own tests. And before we ever launched into this, we wanted to hear that our water quality folks were saying, giving it the thumbs up. And once we got that, that's when we started forging ahead.
Thank you.
You bet.
It's a great question. Back when cast iron started getting thinner, and we have this disaster of cast iron on our hands, but it's not our only problem. It would have been nice for someone to ask the same question. Is there any concern that this stuff would corrode and all fall apart at the same time? Because that's what's happening, kind of.
That's exactly what's happening. Yeah.
Or, same concept on earths and batteries. Are they all going to die at the same time?
Right.
Those are great questions. We don't, we think about it, but,
right.
little leap of faith here.
Correct.
Yeah, but I'm glad you mentioned Chris Fox. if Chris wasn't on board, we wouldn't be doing this. I hope that's a true statement.
That is a true statement.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We take that very seriously.
We, absolutely.
Yes.
Any
Great
other
job,
questions?
Stephanie.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Vice President of Procurement and Enterprise Services, John Zellers, will now review the bids on materials and contracts.
Good morning. Probably will bring the excitement level down a little bit and talk about bids on materials and contracts. So yeah, you never know. John Zellers, Vice President, Procurement and Enterprise Services. Bids on materials and contracts may be found under tab 10. There are a few items that I plan to discuss this morning, and the first may be found on page 2. We are asking for ratification of the purchase of 4 rubber tire loaders. The board may recall in February approving the purchase of 2 rubber tire loaders. After the order was submitted, the vendor canceled the order due to unforeseen supply chain and inventory constraints that had resulted in severe equipment shortages through their manufacturer. Murphy Tractor was the only other bidder and provided a bid in February and can supply the 2 loaders. They can also supply 2 additional loaders scheduled to be purchased in 2023 as part of our fleet management strategic plan. Through inventory, they are scheduled to receive yet this month. Murphy Tractor is unsure of any future availability of loaders due to supply chain challenges. The 2 additional units will be paid with 2022 budgeted funds for equipment that we know will not arrive or be paid for until next year. The purchase was made through a state of Nebraska contract. The next item may also be found on page 2. Ms. Langle spoke to this. We are recommending approval of the proposal to provide owner's representation and program management service for the new construction center and renovation of the existing construction center projects. Through recommendations from industry peers such as Lincoln Electric System, Metropolitan Community College, University of Nebraska, and a few others, we issued an RFP to 2 leaders in the program management field to provide owner representation and program management services. Through in-person interviews and comprehensive review of qualifications, experience, knowledge, personnel, and approach to work, we recommend approval of the proposal submitted by Project Control. Project Control has considerable experience, knowledge, and proven success in the CMAR procurement delivery system. Their experience as an organization, experience of their personnel directly aligned to the type of projects we are undertaking. They have documented success in meeting and exceeding budget constraints and project schedules. References have praised Project Control's wealth of experience in project financial analysis, project construction controls, problem-solving abilities, transparency, and team-oriented approach. We recommend entering into agreement with Project Control for owner representation and program managers services for both construction center projects. The next item may be found at the top of page 3. We accepted a bid for the removal of various odor tanks, as Ms. Lingle did discuss earlier. We only accepted a bid from Midland Resource Recovery as they have the experience and expertise in handling the decommissioning, removal, transportation, and disposal of natural gas odorization equipment. Some of the board may remember in the latter part of the 1990s when the district hired a demolition contractor to conduct similar work. The contractor's approach to removal and transportation of one of the tanks resulted in many gas leak calls throughout the city as the contractor cut the tank in half and transported it on a flatbed as it took it to the disposal site. At that time, the district was unaware of Midland Resource Recovery and their specialization in performing this work. In 2008, we hired Midland's Resource Recovery to decommission and remove an odorant tank at a town border station, in which they performed well without incident. Their bid is recommended for approval. The last item may be found at the bottom of page 3. We are recommending entering into a 3-year agreement with Burrell Enterprises for concrete and asphalt paving repairs associated with various district construction sites. In the past, we have had difficulties finding contractors for this work, as it is not steady or defined quantity of work, making it difficult for contractors to dedicate resources. We have also had challenges with previous contractors with the quality of work, responsiveness, and complaints from our customers. Last year, we took a different approach in which we reached out to 16 contractors requesting their participation in a request for qualifications. Of these contractors, only 2 submitted qualifications. We invited both contractors to submit proposals in which only Burrell Enterprises responded. Over the last year, Burrell has performed well, delivering high-quality work in a timely manner. The proposed contract is for 3 years and is structured such that pricing is renegotiated between the district and Burrell each year, taking into account changes in the market such as labor and material costs. The pricing will be brought to the board annually for review and approval. Furthermore, the district can terminate the contract if agreed pricing is not attained. Today, we're asking approval for the first year. And with that, I'll open it up for any questions. All right, thank you.
Services and Extensions, Director of Engineering Design, Jeff Govanek will review proposed
Good morning, Jeff Skovanek, Director of Engineering Design. I will be speaking to you this morning about the main extensions behind tab 11. We have 7 water main projects this month, no gas. 6 of those 7 water main projects happen to be within district boundaries. 1 is outside, so no gas could be served to that. 4 of the other 6 will be receiving district service. Those projects, as you can see on the map, lie within subdivisions 1, 2, and 4. And in sum total, we have over 490 lots being platted and developed, with over 95% of those lots being residential, the remainder being commercial, industrial, and multifamily. They also represent about $5.9 million in new main extension investments by developers. And it's notable that there are no district contributions required on any of these projects this month. I'm going to quickly highlight 3 projects, the first 2 very briefly. Lake Cunningham Village, and that would be simply the supplemental CNA. The board approved phase 1 of that development back in June of 20, and a short portion of main was not installed at that time as one of the roads had not been fully improved and developed. So to ensure that we didn't risk any future relocation, we held off on that. That main is now going to be installed with phase 2. And in the intervening years, there have been price increases, and the developer has been informed of that. The second project I would mention very briefly is Capriana subdivision. And I mention that just because it is a developer contracted main. There was considerable discussion by the board a few months ago on the WCD policy, so I'll leave my remarks there unless there happen to be any questions. The final project I would highlight, though, is WP 1841, the Crossroads, in the heart of the city at 72nd and Dodge. Obviously a very high-profile redevelopment project. We're going to be installing 8-inch through 24-inch water mains in that project. Notably, there was a 24-inch steel transmission main that traversed north to south through that development, and we cut that main off so that the site could be demolished, regraded, streets realigned, and allow for full redevelopment. That main lied within an easement, and so the district was fully to be reimbursed for any costs. We are going back, instead of putting a new 24-inch transmission main through the Crossroads, we're actually going to put a couple parallel 16-inch distribution mains, which can be tapped. Eliminates a main going through the development. There's a benefit to both the developer, the public, and the district. One final point I would make regarding the Crossroads isn't part of this particular capital expenditure, but we will this fall with our own crews be installing a new main to replace the existing 12-inch cast iron water main in Dodge Street. Obviously, that's a challenging undertaking. We've been working closely with developers engineer, City of Omaha to coordinate that work, and we will strike to complete that later this year. If you have any questions, I am happy to take them.
Jeff, I noticed several of these are north of Dodge Street. Is this part of the reason, too, we have to have that, we're developing that pump station at 156th and Dodge, so that as the developments and everything grow north, we have the capability to supply the water pressure that we need?
Certainly, there's, especially projects 5 and 6 are getting out in that area, and so that West Dodge pump station will allow us to meet the demands that are coming. And obviously, there's no, despite what's happening with the economy, there's no slowdown that we've seen in the desire to develop and grow, so that West Dodge pump station will be
What's the
helpful.
status of the West Dodge pump station? I know it's under construction, but what's the estimated time of completion?
This would be a phone a friend moment. I'm not going to speak off the top of my head. I know construction is progressing out there, and Steph is that friend.
And I live out in that area, and I was amazed because I could see equipment on the south side of Dodge and on the north side of Dodge. I think they went bored right underneath Dodge and never disrupted traffic. So.
That is all true. Thank you for the question. They did just break ground on the pump station this week. Prior to that, they were working on you're exactly right, the bore that went under Dodge Street, which went wonderfully with no disruption to traffic on Dodge Street. But they've just broken ground, and we anticipate it to be done in 12 months.
12 months?
12 months.
And just another quick question. How far underground does the bore go underneath Dodge Street? So
That's a great question. If you looked at the bore pits, if you peeked over the side, they were about 15 feet down to the bottom of the pit from the ground level there. So actually from Dodge Street, it was significantly less. So under Dodge Street, actually 15-ish feet to the top of the pipe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steph.
Vice President of Human Resources, Bonnie Savine, wage and/or salary increases and ratifications.
Thanks very much. Good morning, Bonnie Savine, Vice President of Human Resources. I'll begin by giving a few recaps. The first is on employee counts for the end of April of the last 2 years. On April 30th of 2021, we had 795 regular full-time employees. In addition, we had 4 regular part-time employees for a total of 799. To end this April, we had 825 regular full-time employees and 3 regular part-time employees for a total of 828. We had 7 temporary part-time employees as well at the end of this April. For jobs actively in the placement process, we have 6 jobs that have a requisition routing now for approval, and 14 jobs currently posted. 3 of those are internal only, 8 are external only, 3 additionally are both internal and external. We have 3 of our summer jobs still posted. 1 is full, but we do have some openings in 3 of the others. 7 jobs are in the application or review interview stages, and then we have 7 jobs with 26 candidates that are in the hiring process now. So a number of candidates coming on over the next 3 weeks. On to tab 12. You will find the wage and/or salary increases and ratifications letter. We, again, this month have a larger letter, and we are recommending the Board of Directors approve wage or salary increases for 29 employees this month. 17 OAC employees are on the letter due to a promotion through the normal job posting process. We have 6 additional OAC employees that are receiving a job progression in their job family, and 6 SPA job promotions to our OAC employees being promoted to SPA positions, and 4 are currently SPA employees. At the end of the letter, you'll see that we also have 3 new hire ratifications for April. Are there any questions on the letter behind tab 12? And then I will also take care of the next tab, which is 13. The recommendation letter there is related to the 2021 bargaining unit wage reopener process. We had worked with the union early on in the process to delay this for some negotiation reasons on a grievance. And we are now ready to present the reopener. We got this one underway early this year, and the district's collective bargaining agreement with the IBEW 1521 includes language that outlines this process, and it is our annual wage reclassification. For 2021, that process is now concluded. The reopener committee, which is comprised of 2 union members and 2 management members, they held 7 meetings with 16 employees, reviewing 7 jobs. The committee is recommending adjustments to 1 job group, affecting wages for 5 employees in the material handler and material handler trainee jobs. You'll see the recommendations outlined in the letter behind tab 13. And I would like to recognize Terry Kroll and Tom Todd, as well as Jessica Couture and Katie Pulte for their work in the process this year. And certainly a thanks to all of the employees and supervisors that participated as well. Are there any questions on that letter?
Bonnie, I just have a question that I probably have to ask you. If you could catch me at the break.
You bet.
If you're going to be here.
I will.
Catch me at the break. Just a quick question for you.
You bet. Thank you.
Judicial and Legislative Government Relations Attorney Rick Kubat will review the 4th legislative report for 2022.
Good afternoon. Tab 14 should be the final legislative. Pardon me. On tab 14 should be the final legislative report. I want to briefly touch on 3 bills, moving right into it. On page 3 is LB 344. That was the bill that we discussed last time that was substantively changed via an amendment where it would have moved authority away from the Attorney General's office in terms of enforcing one-call violations and would have put it all under the roof of the State Fire Marshal's office. The State Fire Marshal's office would have had substantively more authority in terms of not only investigations. Currently, they handle one-call investigations for gas-related one-call violations. This would have had the State Fire Marshal's office do it for water, sewer, fiber, electricity, and all things one call. In addition to that, it would have had the State Fire Marshal's office make preliminary determinations on fines and penalties as related to one call violations. The district opposed that bill, and working with others that had similar interest in the lobby, we were able to basically run the clock on that bill, and so it was essentially indefinitely postponed. The district and other excavators and operators will likely be having conversations over the interim to see if we can come forward with a solution, because essentially what's going on right now is the Attorney General's office has indicated that they don't have the resources necessary to timely handle matters as it relates to one-call violations. I'm going to move on to page 5. That was LB 809 by Senator Moser. For district's purposes, that bill did quite a few things, but 2 things that it did as it relates to the district is it allowed monies flowing into the state's revolving fund for purposes of lead service line replacement. It allowed those monies to be essentially distributed to larger communities, those serving over 10,000, which would include the district. The other thing that it did is it increased the amount of potential loan forgiveness
through the SRF program from 50 to 75%. There is a new note on that item. The districts had conversations with the Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy, who administers the state's revolving fund, and they've informed us that the highest amount of loan forgiveness that they're going to be able to provide is up to 58% for lead service line replacement, and that 58% number is primarily going to be provided to areas that are deemed to be disadvantaged communities. And then the last item I wanted to touch upon is on page 7. That is LB 1012. It is the underlying legislation as it relates to the Star Wars Committee and the locating of a potential reservoir on the Lower Platte Lake somewhere between Omaha and Lincoln, working with the city of Lincoln along with M.U.D. Within that bill is a $20 million appropriation to the Nebraska Department of Natural Resources to conduct various studies necessary to move that project forward. And as a piece of that $20 million allocation, there's specific language that the department is to work with the city of Lincoln and M.U.D. to perform an objective analysis of both water quality, water quantity, and any issues related to the public water supply to assure that if that project were to move forward, that there would be no negative unintended consequences for both the city of Lincoln and M.U.D. to provide the public with their potable water needs. So that was, brief update on 3 bills. The session's over. We'll be back again in January. There's banter that there may be a special session called before the end of the year to deal with the Roe v. Wade, looming Roe v. Wade decision in the Supreme Court, but certainly not a matter that the district would be involved in.
Has our position changed since the last time you presented us on any of these bills?
No.
Thank you.
Rick, go back to page 1, your very first sentence. You say this completes the 2-year legislative cycle, and all remaining legislative proposals that fail to pass are indefinitely postponed. What's the 2-year legislative cycle? And if indefinitely postponed mean they're gone, somebody has to reintroduce the bill?
That's correct. So essentially, the legislature operates under a 2-year cycle. You start with the long session, and then you end with the short session. We just completed the short session, so bills that didn't pass this session are gone. They're done. And then next year, in January, when we start the long session, you can have a bill that essentially is pending for 2 years. So unfortunately, that's why this legislative report is a lot longer, is because the first set of grouping is bills that were introduced what would have been 2 legislative sessions ago, or what would that be, 2021. So now when we approach 2023, items introduced, if they're not killed in committee, could be introduced in one legislative session and taken up on the floor in a subsequent legislative session.
Thank you. I didn't realize that.
Good job beating back 1046.
That, a lot of the work that went into that was our friends with Public Power, and they did a fine job informing the Natural Resources Committee about the various problems with that bill.
Good. It's good to have friends.
Hey, Rick, this is probably a great job, by the way, with a very trying session. I've talked to many people who said it was probably the most difficult session they've experienced, whether as a state senator or lobbyist, so great job on behalf of the district. My question pertains to LB 1012, and this might be addressed later down the road, but I wanted to get it in front of you. So the $20 million appropriation for the DNR to consult with the City of Lincoln and M.U.D., do we know if the district's goals with regard to this analysis are aligned with the city of Lincoln? And you may not be able to answer that question right now, but I just want to get that question in front of you.
For the most part, they're going to be the same. There are, and we've had some preliminary conversations with the city of Lincoln on this subject matter. The city of Lincoln does have some nuanced differences as it relates to water quality that are going to be a little bit different than the district. It's also understood, and I've spoken with Mr. Doyle, Mr. Langen, and Mr. Mendenhall, even though it's not entirely clear where the location of the reservoir is going, there's some presumption that initially they're looking at siting that is adjacent to Lincoln Water System's well field. So to that degree, when we do come forward, and we'll be working with Lincoln on our collective concerns, but for the most part, if it's going where we think it's going to go, Lincoln will probably be driving the bus on making the initial determinations of the things that they want to look at for the independent study, and then we'll be providing add-ons to that initial study. Just because its location is going to have a more likely would have a more meaningful impact to Lincoln Water Systems.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you for your time.
Senior Vice President and General Counsel Mark Mendenhall will now present the proposed amendments to the gas and water rules.
Good morning, Mark Mendenhall, Senior Vice President, General Counsel. Before I begin, I don't know if any of you had noticed, Mr. Roberts is so fast with the computer back there to Mr. McGowan's question about the bore under Dodge Street. I believe he posted a picture that our Corporate Communications Division, and there it is, he is fast. The Corporate Communications Division posted on our social media sites that actually shows the bore going under Dodge Street. So great job to Corporate Communications. I've noticed they also posted just the other day the design, the image of what the West Dodge pump station looks like. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know if you all noticed. All right, moving on to tab 15. As you all know, Nebraska statutes empower the board with the authority to create rules, regulations for the conduct of the utilities as it may deem proper. We have previously established gas and water rules. Periodically, those rules undergo amendments, changes. The last time these rules were updated, the gas rules were updated in May of 2017. The water rules were updated in July of 2019. This is a significant effort, began last year. I'd like to just express appreciation to Jason Stanek, our Director of Business Development. Thank you. We're changing that name here. Several other individuals were involved from water operations, gas operations, field services, engineering, construction. So a variety of people come together through the course of the year, and that has resulted in the changes behind the letter in tab 15. You'll see deletions are struck through, additions are red and underlined. I would just point out a couple things on the gas. Well, the gas and water rules, the preface and general conditions were changed to, I think, better align with what the Nebraska statutes say in terms of the authority of this board to enact these rules. Gas rules, we also, I just highlight under Part 1, we addressed a scenario that is most likely, albeit rare, but a scenario where there could be a potential for a bypass of the district system. So we added some language there that I think better protects the district if such an event were to occur. The remainder of the gas rules amendments are much more operational, other than, I'd say, under Part 1G, some changes to billing, a reference to the district's website, and an elimination to the reference to 1723 Harney. Under the water rules, again, similar changes to the preface. There were some changes. Part 1, sub 3 and there are an additional, let's see, some additional language within part, let's see, under 10 that we think better align with the revised lead and copper rule. So to try to better position the district for those changes when they are, I guess, when they're enforced here in 2024. Finally, I would point out another, I think, significant change. Well, maybe not a significant change, but I think a significant clarification would be language within Part 7 of the private fire protection systems, just to better describe the district's relationship to those entities that actually own a private system, including a private hydrant, to ensure that the district does not have liability with private fire hydrants or private fire protection systems. That is all on the owner of the system, the owner of the property, and that they are to ensure that those are properly maintained in accordance with appropriate municipal code. So high level, those are the changes, and certainly Mr. Stanek is here if you've got any questions regarding why there are some operational changes. Happy to answer. Hearing none.
How often do you review these and change them? Is it annually, or is this a multi-year project? Or?
It's not annually. I'd say it's multi-year, and Mr. Stanek, I'd say, owns this responsibility, and as issues come up, whether it be a developer-driven issue or an engineering-related issue, those individuals will work with Mr. Stanek, and then we're not going to bring unless it's a significant change, like we're going to change one word and we're going to bring it to the board. It's like to bring a coordinated effort to ensure that we're not doing this every 3 months or 6 months, but certainly as needed. Long answer to your question, multi-year effort.
Well, thank you. I'm impressed with the detail that's been gone through. I know it takes a lot of time just to read it, but it probably takes a heck of a lot of time to adjust it and comply with the state rules and everything. Good job. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Okay. Thank you all. Oh, and I'm sorry, one last change, if you're all right, Mr. Doyle. I can just make the brief announcement. Just a scheduling change on the agenda. The plan will be, and Chairperson Frost can better describe this if you'd like, but the state of the district, we will move to the end of the regular board meeting to accommodate some timing issues. And so after Mr. Schaffert's presentation, then I believe we'll go on break, reconvene regular meeting, go through all of your votes, and then we'll get to Mr. Doyle's presentation. Okay, thanks.
Do any board meetings have any further comments? Are there any members of the public in attendance today who would like to address the board? Okay. Actually, I skipped.
That's good. That's fine.
No, I go up here, insurance and pension. Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer Joseph Schaffert will present the proposed fee increase for Vanguard Institutional Advisory Services.
Good morning, Joe Schaffert. I serve as the district's Chief Financial Officer, and I'll be speaking to the information contained behind tab 16 that relates to a proposed Vanguard advisory fee increase. I should note that Joe Wolfram, who is our senior investment consultant with Vanguard, is joining us virtually this morning to address any questions the board might have. So just as a bit of background information, Vanguard was engaged in late 2014 to serve as a discretionary asset manager / co-fiduciary on behalf of assets held in trust for the retirement plan. At the time they were selected pursuant to an RFP process, there were 8 firms that responded, and the Insurance and Pension Committee was very heavily involved in that process. We interviewed the final 2 candidates, and Vanguard was selected. This selection was approved by the board in November of 14, November 5th of 14 to be precise. In 2016, their duties were expanded by virtue of the district establishing an OPEB trust. So the assets under management for which they provide services were expanded at that time. And I think it's important to note that Vanguard does serve as a co-fiduciary. It's determined, or it's referred to as a 338 advisor when ERISA defines what an advisor is. Our previous advisor served in a 321 capacity, which means they were not a co-fiduciary, so a little less accountability and liability. There's a lot that goes along with being a co-fiduciary, and that's the duties that Vanguard has assumed. And despite this higher level of accountability, Vanguard's fees were actually about $1.2 million less than our previous provider at the time. It was significant. So during the April 18, 2022 meeting of the Insurance and Pension Committee, Joe Wolfram presented a proposed increase to their advisory fee schedule. And this is the first fee increase that Vanguard has proposed. It's driven primarily by increased personnel costs engaged in both customer service as well as research and the necessary computer systems that go along for the ride. The only fee to be increased is the advisory fee component. We also pay fund expenses and trustee expenses. So the proposed increase is from 2.2 basis points to 3.3 basis points. And basis points is not a measure I routinely use, so a basis point is equal to 0.01%. So 100 basis points is 1%. They're looking at a 1.1 basis point increase. So based on the December 31, 2021 combined pension and OPEB trust asset value of just shy of $655 million, this will raise our advisory fees by $73,000. So we'll take it from $145,000 to $218,000. Again, the caveat being the value of the assets changes every day. Given what's going on lately, it's not something we don't like to open those statements right now, either personally or professionally, but we all know what's going on there. The increase will be phased in over 2 years, beginning October 1 of 2022. And I think absent some context, it's a little difficult to know, are we getting a fair deal, so to speak, from Vanguard? And that's the slide that's being displayed that Joe Wolfram shared during the committee meeting. Lots of things going on this slide, but the second bar down is what pertains to us. This bar is segregated by the size of assets under management. So we fall into that second bar. And you see that OCIO reference up above, again, not an acronym that I'm familiar with, but it's basically outsourced chief investment officer, which is effectively what Vanguard is for the pension and OPEB trust assets. But you can see we fall in the lowest cost category. So what that's saying is 30% of a comparable sized trust pays less than 10 basis points. With the fee increase, ours is 3.3. So, and this is the finest slice of data that we can find from a comparable data perspective. They don't even report on 5 basis points or less. The cutoff is 10. So I think the context is important. There's a lot going on there, but I thought that graph was helpful, and Joe did present this to the members of the Insurance and Pension Committee when we met in April. One final point I do want to make on the topic, though, and this is more from the perspective of, I'll say, refreshing institutional memory, and in the interest of complete transparency with the board. When this recommendation was made in November of 14, the board memo, I should say, represented that the advisory fees would not increase. In retrospect, as we've looked at this further, and I had Joe Wolfram get their compliance folks involved, it was a misinterpretation of an RFP response that Vanguard made. They acknowledged that their response could have been clearer. It was kind of a boilerplate response that was not interpreted correctly. And they're taking responsibility that it could have been clearer. So in exchange for that lack of clarity, they've agreed to implement this fee increase in 2 phases. The first phase would be effective October 1 of 2022. The second would be effective a year later. And then when that higher rate is in effect, the advisory fees will be locked in for a period of 3 years. Again, Vanguard is not in the business of raising fees. Like I said, this is the first time they proposed a fee increase. They are known as a low-cost, high-value provider, but this fee increase they felt was necessary. The other thing I think that's important to notice is that if we were a new customer approaching Vanguard with an RFP, we would be paying more than what they're suggesting or what they're proposing with this fee increase. We would be paying, given our asset values, about 42,000 higher per year at a minimum, is what Joe shared with me. So management recommends that the board approve Vanguard's fee increase, thereby retaining their services for a number of reasons. Management has been very pleased, and I think I can speak for members of the Insurance and Pension Committee. They've been pleased with the services Vanguard has provided. I think it's very safe to say that Vanguard has played a key role in the increased rigor by which these assets are managed. They continue to be a low-cost, high-value provider for these services. And again, they're saving us significant money from a previous provider that had been in place for many, many years, $1.2 million at the time. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Just a couple comments, Joe. First of all, you clarified for me earlier, these fees for the services of Vanguard come out of the assets of the fund.
They do.
They're not out of, our ratepayers don't pay them out of our general rates. The pension fund pays them. And if you look at the pension fund, how it's grown over the last 5 years or so, it's been a tremendous growth. Under Vanguard, they've done a great job growing these assets. So, you know, taking it out of the assets, the small amount that they charge versus the great growth in our funds is something I think is very reasonable. Secondly, I just want to say, I know Gwen's chair, Tanya's not here, but every quarter that we have our meetings with the pension committee, meetings with Joe and Vanguard, they're awesome meetings. They come totally prepared and present a lot of information that, quite frankly, some of it's hard to digest, but the top part of it you can digest, and you know they're doing a great job. I just want to say Joe and Vanguard do a great job, and I appreciate it, and I think we ought to, you know, be happy with them, even with this little increase.
Thank you. Thank you for all the hard work you put into this. You do really an outstanding job, and you can never leave. But just so that I have this clearly understood, when you mentioned 3 years, that point of 3 years is from October 2023?
Yes.
And onward for 3 years. Thank you.
3 years after that point, that's correct.
And one last thing I'd like to say. I told you these quarterly meetings that we have are really very, very good, structured, informative meetings. And even though Tanya, Gwen, and I are there every month, I'd encourage some board member, if you want to come and just sit in and realize the service that Vanguard does, please come and sit in on those. They're awesome meetings.
We just have to be careful with how many can attend those, but absolutely, I don't disagree. Thank you.
Okay, wasn't worth hearing. The committee meetings and the public hearing are adjourned. We will reconvene for the regular monthly board meeting in 10 minutes. Potty break. Roll call.
Not
Oh,
yet.
no. I would like to call the meeting to order. I'm Jack Frost, Chairperson of the Metropolitan Utilities District Board of Directors, and I'd like to welcome you all to the regular monthly board meeting this morning, May 4th, 2022. This meeting is being live streamed from the boardroom at the M.U.D headquarters building located at 7350 World Communications Drive, and a recording of this meeting will be uploaded to the M.U.D website after the meeting's conclusion. Now it's roll call.
Howard.
Here.
Kavanaugh.
Here.
Bagley.
Here.
Cook. Friend.
Here.
Frost.
Here.
McGowan.
Here, and Jack, I apologize for being a little late. I was talking to Bonnie Sedin.
Well, that's typical.
But here.
Okay. I would like to advise all those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall at the back of the boardroom. As announced at previous meetings this past year, the M.U.D board must comply with the statutory requirement under the Open Meetings Act, which limits the number of virtual board meetings to half the total number of board meetings during the course of the calendar year. At this time, there are 4 possible virtual meetings remaining for the current year. Once the maximum allowable virtual meetings has been met for the year, a board member may still opt to attend a board meeting virtually, but will not be recorded as present in the meeting minutes, will not be able to participate in meeting discussions, and will not be able to vote on any meeting agenda items. This announcement is solely intended to ensure that this board remains mindful of the statutory limitations. And now, for those who wish to participate, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of minutes for the committee meetings and regular board members for April 6, 2022. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Proposed updates to the billing price book, Director McGowan.
I move we approve the proposed updates to the billing price book along with the resolution as presented by the Manager of Financial Planning and Analysis, Stephanie Lemons, and as outlined in her letter dated April 26 and discussed in committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Capital Expenditures, Director Friend.
Thank you. Capital Expenditures, tab number 6. I move approval as outlined in the memo from Gina Langle dated April 26th.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Acceptance of contracts and payment of final estimates, Director Friend.
Thank you. Also discussed in committee. I move approval of acceptance of contracts found under tab 7 in the memo from Stephanie Henn dated April 26th.
Second.
Second. Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Change order for joint water main contract for the city of Omaha, Director Friend.
Also discussed in committee, I move approval as outlined in the memo from Corey O'Brien dated April 19th.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Pipe bursting pilot project, Director Friend.
Also discussed in committee, I move approval as outlined in the memo from Chris Thompson dated April 22nd.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Bids on materials and contractors, Director Friend.
Again, also discussed in committee, I move approval as outlined in the memo from Sherry Meisinger dated April 22nd.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Main extensions, Director Friend again.
Also discussed in committee, move approval as outlined in the memo from Corey O'Brien dated April 26th.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Wage and/or salary increases and ratifications, Director Begley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we approve the wage and/or salary increases and ratifications as discussed in committee this morning and outlined in the memo from April 20th, 2022 from Vice President Bonnie Savine.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
2021 bargaining unit wage reopener, Director Begley.
I move we approve the 2021 bargaining unit wage reopener as outlined in the memo from Ms. Savine on April 25th, 2022 and discussed in committee this morning.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Fourth legislative report for 2022, Director Kavanaugh.
I directed this to be placed on file.
Is that required? No. Okay. Amendments to gas and water rules, Director Kavanaugh.
I move that we approve the amendments to the gas and water rules regulations as presented from Senior Vice President General Counsel Mark Mendenhall, and it was discussed in committee.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Proposed fee increase for Vanguard Institutional Advisory Services. Director Howard.
Thank you. I move to approve the proposed fee increase for Vanguard Institutional Advisory Services as presented by Mr. Shafford in the committee meeting and as outlined in his letter dated April 26, 2022, along with accompanying documents.
Second.
Thank you.
Discussion. Roll call.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Yes.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
We will now proceed to President Mark Doyle's presentation of the state of the district.
Well, that started out well. I turned on my microphone. It's a good sign. Mark Doyle, President. Thank you for your time today, and as always, thank you for your support on all of these items that are on today's agenda, and as always, it's never taken for granted. I'll talk a little bit about your support and things we recommend, especially as it relates to the gas industry later. I want to start out by briefly describing what the state of the district is. To me, what it is, and if it's different to you or it should be in the future, I would appreciate any and all feedback you have. I'm pleased that we've made this we've institutionalized this, and this will far outlive my tenure here. It would be really neat to look back in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and 2000s and 2000 up to current at these types of presentations to see what were managers and employees thinking at those times. So one of the things that occurs to me is we're making a record for the future at this point in time. And I want to compliment all the employees of the district right now for all that they do day in and day out, and it's happening right this minute. We're all over this community. We're in homes. We're all over. We're in the back office, and we're doing the work that is required to serve the customers of the Metropolitan Utilities District safe, high-quality, ample water and natural gas. If this were I'm trying to think of an analogy, if this were a presentation on my vehicle, I wouldn't talk to you about the pistons and the valves and the cam. I would tell you about the things that I know that need focus. But those things are critically important, and I'm using that analogy to say that if I don't talk about things that many, many of my fellow coworkers are working on every day, it doesn't mean they're not important. This is more of a, where do we need to get to in the future? Where are we today? And a little bit of maybe where we've been in the past. So thank you for your time, and thank you for the agenda change, Chairman Frost. I thought because we're making a record and because maybe it will get lengthy, I try to be brief, but sometimes I have a hard time. I'm pretty excited about these topics. If you have to leave, I won't be offended, and it'll always be on live stream for your viewing later. So thank you for that accommodation. Next slide, please. I always like to start out by restating our mission, and that's to provide safe, reliable, and cost-effective natural gas and water service to our community. And it's really our communities, but I call it one big community. And our core values of safety, job one, reliability, fiscal responsibility, and organizational excellence. Next slide. I also have some notes here, and instead of trying to make this an exercise of memorizing everything, I've asked for some information from several employees, and I will be referring to them and almost reading in some cases because they've done such a nice job of providing me with what I need to do to tell what they do day in and day out. So we're laying the groundwork for the future, and we're going to continue to recommend significant investments in infrastructure, not just on the water side, but also on the gas side, of course. But I don't talk about that as much because it's been in such good shape since 2008 when we doubled down and got more serious about our gas infrastructure. The systems we use, and of course, you can't do anything without capable, engaged, high-quality employees, and we have a lot of those. And I'll be talking about them a little bit also. Next slide, Jake. So our safety program. We've always been focused on safety, but I think in the last several years we have probably set the bar a lot higher than maybe it was prior. The safety record at M.U.D. has improved greatly over the last couple years, and there's a couple main reasons for that, and that would be the employees that are closest to the work. Here's a summary of the improvement over the last 2 years specifically. So in 2017, we had 30 recordable injuries with a recordable injury rate of 3.4. That's how we measure it. In last year, 2021, we had 10, and that isn't just luck. And to go from 30 to 10 is a big deal. And I want to thank all the employees involved and the safety committees, the safety and security department, but especially the employees. We can't do anything without the frontline employees all the way up through management having a total focus on safety, and I want to thank them all for that. We will, I know it sounds like lip service, but we want every employee to return home to their family in the same condition that they showed up to work. That is our goal. We also want the public to be safe because we do a lot of work that's inherently dangerous, and it's incumbent upon us to provide those services as safely as we can. We have a training program that began in 2019 with the goal to underscore the importance of M.U.D's safety culture, and it has a direct link to these injury rates that I just mentioned. It's specifically intended to discuss with supervisors what they can do to cultivate a safety culture amongst their crews. It's not that they haven't in the past, but we definitely want to link this to injury rates and do everything we can. Some of those items would be understanding the ethical and moral reasons for safety, as well as the financial and legal reasons for caring about safety. Of course we care about the safety of our employees. That's the main focus. But there is a legal and financial aspect to do. Injuries are expensive. There's a legal aspect. You know, lawsuits can occur. We want to discuss we continue to discuss the supervisor's role and practical actions that must be taken to build that safety culture, communicate clearly what's expected, not just of the employees, but also of the supervisors, and how to identify moments where safety errors occur and are used as teaching moments to provide effective instruction to employees on the identified safety issue. We also like to share compelling stories to relate the impact of setting a personal example in the safety of employees. If you ever attend a the Safety Council luncheon, they always have compelling stories, and you leave there just very somber. And what can occur and what often does occur. This almost sounds like second nature, and I'd say it is with our employees now, and I can't say enough about how pleased I am how the employees have reacted to maybe some new things. I get personal stories all the time from individuals that approach me and are real happy about it. It's not always easy. It takes a little longer to do things right. For example, our shoring processes and procedures are way better than they used to be. And one thing that I'd like to share with the board that I often tell employees that have told me, you know, it costs a lot of money to properly shore, and our contractors and our partners don't always do that. And you heard of a cave-in recently where that wasn't the case. A contractor's contractor. It wasn't M.U.D, but it was an M.U.D job. We will never use that against our employees. If we ever compare our employees and the cost of what we do to a third party, all of that will be factored out in my world. I would never do that. And that maybe has happened in the past when I was on the board, or I felt it has. We owe it to ourselves and to our public to do things right. So hats off to the employees for that. We also execute a 2-minute drill often. I'll tell you more about that if you'd like, but it's really every time a shift begins, when a change of location occurs, when a shift in job responsibility changes, when a task or a function on a job site is unexpected and could result in an injury, when a supervisor deems it necessary for any reason, there's a 2-minute drill, there's a card that's filled out, and it's filed. These are great things. Nothing's a silver bullet, but a mindset of safety is with our employees, and I want to thank you for your support and your encouragement on safety being job one. As far as public safety goes, you probably know that our approach to gas-filled structures has significantly and drastically changed over the last several years. Not because of any one incident, because that's what we were doing. And today, we have exclusion zones. Nobody goes within 100 feet. Very few go within the next 100 to 200 feet and then the 300 feet area. Don't quote me on these. I have these all written down. But the point is, we're operating in a control zone establishment method with public safety whenever there is an occurrence or an incident. And I think it has already saved lives. And again, hats off to the employees. You can't do this without engagement and total buy-in for our employee population. So can't say enough about them. You're following right along, Jay. Thank you. I noticed, I mentioned agency representative. The reason that's on the last slide, which you don't have to go back to, is we will participate in the command center with all of the public agencies. If there's an incident or an event that involves many, we will be represented. Haven't always been in the past, but we will be in the future. Field operations. love to talk about field operations, and I'm going to read you a couple notes from the field operations area. Field services' foremost responsibility is providing first on-scene emergency response to events on our natural gas and water distribution systems or a customer's property. This is accomplished through customer service technicians with natural gas and water skills covering our service territory of 230,000 gas customers and 215,000 water customers, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Our customers can be confident that we're going to do everything right, but when things happen that are unexpected, we're there. All technicians have the word customer in their job title, and this is purposeful. They are the true face of the district with most interactions occurring with the customers in their homes and businesses. Of course, we are construction crews, and there's many others that are the face, but field service, they're everywhere. Ensuring excellent customer service while performing these tasks is a core expectation of our employees. We measure things through key performance indicators, and I can't say enough about, and again, I don't want to leave anybody out. I'm talking about the things that maybe we've done some things a little different in the last 4 years. A couple things that, if I were naming things, and please, 5 of you don't read anything into this, but we've been working on the Tim Cavanaugh 2-hour window for quite a while now. It's been really good. I firmly believe, and I've been told this, that other companies that come into your home, and this really wouldn't be OPPD because they don't come into homes as often as M.U.D does, or Nebraska Furniture Mart, or plumbers. We're being held up as the example of why don't you have a 2-hour window? M.U.D does. I consider that a really big success. Thank you for your support and your push on that.
Terrific challenge that was accepted.
Thank you. And hopefully you get good feedback, but no news is often good news. There was another item on here that I'll get to when I hit it. Oh, texting ahead. That's something new and different. Now, it's not brand new for us, but if you have a service order, you will get a text. If you want a text, you have the option 24 hours in advance, give or take, that the technician's coming to your home. When the technician is on their way, you get a text with the technician's picture so you know who to expect at your doorstep. And when that's done, you get another text with a link to fill out a survey on how that went. Not everybody fills out surveys, of course, but a couple hundred every month do, and our score, give or take, is about 85%. So you're going to get mostly people maybe that have a little something to say, and it's not always good. So I think 85% is fantastic. The good news is 100% of our customers that interact with us on service orders get to tell us how we did, and I think that's wonderful, and it's always good. Back up one slide, Jay. Here's the other item that I don't want to overlook. With your help and support and the critically important and great work of all our employees involved, we've decreased our gas emergency response time by 28% since 2015. The untrained eye might not think 6 or 7 minutes is a lot, and we're talking on average. That is absolutely stellar, and that's industry leading. So thank you for all that. Okay, employee culture. So we've had a new focus probably on what has changed from one thing in the past to a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative current day. And we created a statement in 2020 to refocus. I'm not going to I've read that before. But the things that have occurred in 2021 include focus groups. This was in the first quarter to gain feedback and build the foundation for a sustainable D&I program. 3 meetings were held with 16 participants. We had also in quarter 1 a hiring manager refresher guide. In October of '21, we completed user D&I introductory sessions where we partnered with the Omaha Chamber of Commerce's code staff. These were 30-minute sessions with all employees, and those were well received and very well done. We had an internal career fair in September of '21 with many participants, and you might not think you need an internal career fair, but there are employees that appreciate coming to an event in one spot, and it was out here where you can talk to other people in other departments, and instead of just posting for whatever comes up, you might be able to pick where you want to go. Because I think you can chart your own course at the Metropolitan Utilities District if you are so inclined. We launched our employee resource groups, and we completed that in December of 2021. We have a cultural resource group and a women's resource group, and you don't have to be a woman to belong to the women's resource. It's like the national organization for women, of women. You don't have to be a woman. So those have been very well. We have officers. They're engaged. If you want to talk to any of them, you could see them this weekend at the Cinco de Mayo parade, by the way. And it's going really well. We're thinking of having an open house in the lunchroom, maybe in conjunction with a board meeting where we have those groups in and we can just go in and chat and talk. So if you're interested in that, I think we're going to do that. I also will provide you with a report in email of all these things. I'm only mentioning a few. So next slide, please. Well, good news. We've talked so much about fiscal responsibility in the last couple months. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. You know as well as we do that our financial health is good, and the rating agencies' reviews are important, and they're here for the record. Next slide. Business continuity. Something that we started in earnest and created a business continuity program well before the pandemic, but it certainly came into play when the pandemic hit. But even before that, we had significant flooding, we've had droughts, we've had mini tornadoes that took out parts of the well field. So we're going to continue that, and we're going to engage in tabletops. We haven't done that as much as we're going to in the future, and it could be anything from things we know about to unplanned things we don't know about. So business continuity is a strong focus. You know that we've entered our phase 3 reentry plan after the pandemic, and we are working on an actual work from home policy that is almost ready for prime time. I've had a few discussions with a few board members, and I see it as almost the type of benefit that employees in the future will ask if you have medical insurance. They're also asking if you have that, and some will come, some won't. We think it can be responsible. We think it can be managed right. It's a very detailed, well-done policy at this time that will always be subject to change. We hope you have your support on that. There will be an aspect of this that will be beneficial to our field personnel. I believe they'll be able to do training at home with this type of a policy instead of coming into the office, and it'll help during inclement weather. There are all kinds of aspects to this that can be very beneficial outside of the obvious recruiting and retention. We've had a little bit of a retention issue lately since the world has changed a little bit over the last couple years, but we think we have a control on it, and we think we're going to move ahead with this policy, and it'll help plug that gap. I'm open to discussion on that anytime, by the way, because I know many of you work at places and you have your experience and what's going on at your places of employment as well. Next slide, please. Always like to mention how we help customers financially. Home Fund, formerly the, what was it called, Director Begley, the Heat Aid Fund? Yes. Same thing, new brand, great thing. Very helpful. 814 customers received, on average, $334 per customer. And on top of that, we partnered with Douglas County, as the slide shows, with COVID-19 utility assistance program funds to the tune of $1 million, helping 2,000 customers with their bills. We are a utility with a heart. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Next slide, please. So you can't talk about 2021 without mentioning the polar vortex. For me, having been around here for pretty close to 30 years, if you count all my tenure, I learned a lot during that polar vortex, and I learned the incredible advantage of having peak shaving plants, not just LNG, but propane. And we're rethinking everything. We're going to end up in a really good position when we're done with that large capital expenditure. But our peak shaving facilities during that time shielded the district from spending an additional $100 million on gas purchases. You could just, Mr. Knight just sent something recently for some customers in Kansas that are it's incredible how much customers had to make up for utilities that weren't set up the same way. So we've asked you to invest in that infrastructure at a time where it's maybe not popular everywhere in this country to invest in natural gas infrastructure. And I stand behind it, and we're happy for your support, and I'll talk a little more about that in a few minutes. I won't mention natural gas prepays, but that's obviously a major advantage that we have also, and has also resulted in shielding our customers from much higher expenses. Next slide, Jay. I mentioned the capital improvement a minute ago, and it substantially improves our reliability and our peak capacity in that facility for the next 40 years. We want to thank you for your support on that, and we'll continue to give you updates as we move forward and ultimately complete that project. Next, Jay. Gas infrastructure replacement, never want to forget that. Every year in and year out, give or take, we're replacing 40 miles of low-pressure gas mains that need to be replaced. And, you know, you saw the water presentation earlier. The gas mains are smaller, and we've been able to push them through the ground and use plastic types of pipes for quite a long time. So the water side, it might be new, but it's certainly not new for underground utilities. Before 2000, why don't you go to the next slide? Before 2008, we had over 560 miles of these problematic mains in the ground, and that's the map on the left, all the blue. And that really looked like a daunting task back then, like the water does now. Look at that map on the right. You should be very proud of that. And that doesn't just happen. Hats off to my predecessor, all the managers past and that are still here today that recommended to the board to get that going and stick with it and never waver, and we're going to get there. And then we're going to move on to other things that we need to do on the gas side, like inside meters and making sure that our regulator stations are all solid and above ground. Just what a great story. And it's motivating as we look at this daunting task on the water side. And since emissions is constantly a topic, next slide, please, Jay. Removing that leaking pipe has resulted in over 408,000 metric tons of carbon to be removed from the atmosphere in that time frame. So there is an aspect to this that definitely is also natural gas companies taking care of their infrastructure and also reducing emissions and providing a much safer system. And while we're on the topic of environmental sustainability, the CNG program remains solid, strong, and better than ever. We're probably on track to dispense over 3.6 million gasoline gallon equivalents of CNG in 2022. And we continue to have this RNG pilot that's been running for a few years that takes that otherwise flared off methane off of the old State Street landfill into our LNG plant to be used in the distribution system. Renewable natural gas is a big topic. The infrastructure's not quite there. It takes critically complicated equipment to create methane off of a landfill. Not to create it, but to prepare it to be used in a natural gas distribution system off of a landfill, off of a dairy farm, off of a hog farm, off of a sewage treatment plant. There is so much methane available in things that we do as humans that can be used in the existing natural gas system. Over the next 10 years and beyond, it's going to be something. And that particular type of natural gas is net zero. You're taking otherwise flared off or released in the atmosphere, and you're putting it into the distribution system. So you're removing emissions and reusing something that's already there. We've moved 330,000 MCFs or decatherms of RNG since we've been doing this back to 2015. That's about 2.6 million gasoline gallon equivalents that would have been flared off that's coming out of a landfill that's just sitting there. Stay tuned, the industry's moving probably at the speed of light with creating and using renewable natural gas all over the country, but there's so much natural gas that's used by everyone that it's not a big percentage yet, but there are many sewer treatment plants, landfills, farms that are generating renewable natural gas and putting into the local gas company's distribution system. Natural gas industry's a little bit being criticized wrongly in many, many cases. That's a real great story. Next slide, please. You know that we've engaged with OPPD on their Power with Purpose project. That is providing natural gas backup to improve the reliability for solar and wind. I'm going to read you something in a minute, and so hold that thought. So you're investing in infrastructure, and there is legislation around the country that is stopping gas utilities from new connections. There's policies at the federal level that are prohibitive to natural gas, but you can't provide renewables the way that the electric companies need to at this time because batteries are not ready for prime time without natural gas backup unless you want to do it with coal or oil. Natural gas has been reducing emissions in this country for the last decade to a large tune, and I'll read you something here in a minute. Next slide, please. Industry outlook. Let me take the liberty here, and I hope you have the time. This is from a publication called Natural Allies for a Clean Energy Future. Solar power generates electricity approximately 25 to 30% of the time, while onshore and offshore wind produces power 35% to 55% of the time. The point is, not 100% of the time. Battery storage is necessary to store energy, so it can be dispatched when renewables are not generating power. But batteries can't affordably or technologically be deployed on a mass scale yet, and I don't know when that is. It's going to take some technological breakthroughs. Even the best batteries only provide up to 8 hours of backup electricity. Natural gas-generated electricity is reliable. Think of power with purpose. We are building a gas plant to support OPPD's renewables. Natural gas-generated electricity is reliable, clean, and flexible, able to be dispatched at scale in minutes to address power shortages regardless of the weather. These turbines that'll be out there are able to come up in 5 minutes, don't quote me, and Mr. Knight can correct me, in a matter of minutes when the wind or the sun isn't providing what's needed. And think of the polar vortex. So without natural gas, this foundational role is played by other carbon-intense sources of energy like coal and oil. In the worst cases, it means blackouts. We saw blackouts right here. This is not somewhere else in the world. This is right here in our metropolitan area. I'm not criticizing anything. I'm just trying to tell the story from the LDC side of things, and that would be us. California's recent struggles highlight the challenges states face when working to end natural gas use in favor of renewable-only power grids. That makes up about a third of the state's power generation. During the 2020 heat wave, demand for energy needed to power air conditioners peaked just as the evening approached and the sun goes down and solar starts declining, resulting in emergency blackouts sometimes for days, and incidentally putting public safety in jeopardy. In 2021, severe drought left California's carbon-free hydropower operating at low levels. Now you have a drought. In some cases, knocking them offline and forcing their governor to dispatch emergency natural gas plants so they could avoid blackouts on the hottest days of summer. So the natural gas network provides an extremely high level of reliability and resiliency for our customers because of the physical properties of the system. Now let me read you a comment. I'm not going to go into detail, but there was a comment out of the administration recently. This is a nonpartisan topic, and I'm a big natural gas fan because I don't think the story's being told the right way. No one should make it easy for the gas interest to be building out 30 or 40-year infrastructure. Then we're stuck with it, and you know what the fight will be. We can't close these because of employment, because of investors, et cetera. Well, you just approved, and I'm rock solid 100% in support of the recommendation, 30, 40-year infrastructure in this LNG plant. And you also continually approve our move to update this natural gas system, our pipes, which is more than 30 to 40 years. If we weren't allowed to update our infrastructure, these pipes would be leaking worse in 10 years and 20 years, and it would be a big problem. This network is available for other things in the future, whether it be clean hydrogen blends or who knows what's next. You're doing the right thing, and we're just starting to see the tip of it here in our area, but it's coming. We're going to have some really significant discussions. That's why I thought it'd be nice to take a little time here to make a record. So, unlike electric infrastructure, which is vulnerable to outages, we know this, our stuff's underground. It's resilient and reliable just simply because of where it is. And the redundancy and the interconnectedness of the grid provides resiliency to protect our families and businesses, particularly when it's needed most, and I will say, to protect them financially. Natural gas is a choice, and it needs to be a choice. Can you imagine if we couldn't use natural gas in this? It's unimaginable. It's low cost, it's like any other chemical that we use in our lives. It needs to be handled properly, and we are, and we're cognizant of emissions, and we'll do everything. We're fixing our infrastructure. You know, that's at our doorstep, and we're doing it. So the last thing on this article that I thought was interesting, in New England during the 2018 winter, a 2-week Arctic cold snap exposed the real-world consequences of anti-natural gas policies, resulting in higher costs, higher carbon emissions, and greater risk to our energy security. The power companies burned 2 million barrels of oil over 15 days to keep the lights on because low-cost natural gas was unavailable due to the explosive costs because of rising demand. Environmental regulators called it a disaster that could have been avoided if more natural gas was available. And we're exporting a lot of natural gas right now. But I just wanted to kind of throw some things out there. I don't think I've shared as much as I should on the state of the industry. And I also want to continue to say that, you know, a recommendation to do things that others might criticize, for example, putting $80 million into natural gas infrastructure, is on me. And it's from the team with me. And today, we're more committed to that decision than we ever were, and we want to thank you for your continuing support. Our board's going to change over the next 50 years, right? Hopefully it doesn't change too much right away, but over the next 50 years, it's going to change, and there's going to be different. And if 4 of the board isn't up to speed on how critically important these things are and these investments, it's a problem for our customers. So thank you for indulging me on that topic. I'll talk less about water infrastructure, though. That's the good news. I don't know what to say other than I'm so pleased and proud of all the employees on their commitment to getting after this daunting task. And right now, as we speak, I'm not going to talk about pipe bursting because we did that this morning. We have a tool being inserted in the Field Club Reservoir today, right now, that's swimming down to the Edna Street pump station 6.5 miles away near 36th and Edna, which is south of Harrison, that's taking a look at that large PCCP, otherwise known as concrete pipe with cables in it that can corrode. There we go. It's the one on the right. And we'll get feedback on that we've never gotten before, and this is, maybe we're not replacing it, but we're looking at things along with our replacement and rehabilitation plans on our smaller pipes to avert disastrous water main breaks, because these pipes are big and they're important and they're made of concrete and they have cables in them that can corrode. So very happy about that. Very proud of the employees for getting after it because it takes a lot of work. And incidentally, I'll say it again, when these third parties that own these tools come and work with M.U.D crews, they tell everybody they're the best. The access points that we build and the facilitation that we provide along with this is second to none. And that's saying a lot. They do a lot of this work. Next slide, Jay. This is just a note to say that we're completing a hydraulic model that gives us a better chance at modeling anything we do, whether it's building a pump station like we are on Dodge Street, or adding new infrastructure, or possibly providing water in a regional manner to other municipalities. We've enhanced our triangle of reliability, and we're able to do things like, next slide, please. Because we have 3 water plants now, we're able to complete our capital improvement plans of our extremely important water plants that were here before Platte West, and that would be Florence and Platte South. Not going to spend a lot of time on that. I just want to tell you, you can be confident that we have capital improvement plans, and we're looking out into the future, and we're going to try to make sure that our facilities are rock solid and reliable into the future, just like our distribution system and our people. Some of the benefits, we can balance water production between 3 plants while we're doing upgrades. And we're also exploring opportunities to expand regional water. As you know, we're connecting to Plattsmouth and we're talking to Lincoln. Lincoln, nothing will happen until you're involved. We're working through the decision plan and a master plan to make sure that we have rock solid engineering information, not just opinions of Mark or anyone else. And I think to 2021, next slide, please. Next one, I kind of blew past that one, Jay. Next one. It's always great to say that, we were judged the best tasting water in Nebraska. I don't want to split hairs here, but I think it might have been Platte South. So we have the director of Platte South, Mr. Whitfield, up there accepting the award, and he should. We're very proud of all of our water plants, but I'm pretty sure that one maybe was the water that we entered. So, that's something. In my day, I kind of like stuff like that. Very motivating. Thank you to all the employees that continue to work hard and choose to have careers in natural gas and water and provide this type of quality product to our customers. Next slide, Jay. Facility plans, I'm not going to go through these. We talk about them quite a bit. I know we got the headquarters done at a time where maybe, then a pandemic hits, but we had an opportunity downtown that was a good opportunity. But we're moving forward with your support for a new construction center. We're going to renovate the existing construction center. We're also going to renovate the operations center, but we're going to slow down a little on that so we can keep the construction centers in focus. We're going to keep that temporary site up and running until we're complete with these. So facilities are getting a lot of attention and a lot of support, and your support of that is very much appreciated. Next slide, Jay. Cybersecurity is a topic. We still think the top threats are phishing attacks, ransomware attacks, attacks on cloud security vulnerabilities, supply chain attacks, nation-state sponsored attacks. All sounds really scary, and it is, but I feel like there's no silver bullet, but I'm confident that we have the systems and processes in place to give us the best chance we can to make sure that our customers' information and our critically important industrial control systems, pumps and things, are protected. And that we'll be alert, just like our water plants are protected with perimeter and we're alerted if something happens, so are our networks and systems. One of the things that we've done lately is we've had phishing exercises, and I don't know if any of you in the places you work have those where you, yeah, it's important. And I'm pretty proud of how our employees have reacted to that. And from where we started to where we are now, which wasn't a very long time, it's really good. And that keeps it in front of mind, and it's also very tangible. That is probably one of the greatest threats. I'm pretty confident you can use technology on the perimeters and the networks, but the people aspect is really important, and there's only so much you can do to control that other than making sure that there's an awareness, and I'm very pleased, and I want to encourage our employees to keep it up and talk to your coworkers. It's really important. We're talking about our customers' assets here. Lastly, I have a couple slides just to let you know that we're also working on an actual strategic plan for the district. We'll have Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 goals. Tier 3 are considered stretch goals. And there's really no big surprises here, but we do want to institutionalize a master plan for the district like we're doing for the water department. Next slide, please. You know, you see some, I don't think there's too many surprises here. Water IR, LNG upgrade, Platte South, Florence, water master plan. We've got safety and public health initiatives. Lead services is a big topic. We don't own them, but we're quite certain we're going to be responsible to take care of that health hazard that exists all over the country. And we have a lot of things going to help us get after that. Employee safety culture, always, never done. Business continuity, I mentioned earlier. Fiscal responsibility, we are doing a water rate review. We want to make sure when we go into more regional water, and especially with a large regional partner that we've been talking about, we want to make sure that our wholesale rates are proper and they're equitable. And I used to say this needs to be a win-win, whatever we do. It kind of just needs to be a win. I get the win the other side, but we need to make sure that it's in the best interest of our customers and ratepayers that have built this system. I'm real happy with the team on analyzing that regional water, though. We've really taken a really nice, strategic, effective, and efficient approach to that. Organizational excellence, I've talked about some of those things earlier, so I won't go into any more of those now. I really want to thank you for your time here, and I'm open to any questions. I got all day.
Hey, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Outstanding in every way. Your vision, you're spot on. Something I've always noticed about how we state how many customers we have. We always talk about 200 and some thousand customers. That's actually houses and structures. How come we don't ever say 220,000 customers serving 600,000 people?
Director Kavanaugh, we will from now on. Point well taken.
Doesn't it sound?
Yes, it does.
A lot.
And in
bigger?
my dialogue, when I have a conversation, I say that often.
Yeah, because they
say, well,
you know,
we're talking meters here.
Yeah,
we'll do that.
But it's way more than that. You got a family like
Absolutely.
Family the size of Begley's. I mean, my gosh, you
Absolutely.
got, you know,
Yeah.
versus my household. But
Those twins my twin sons taking 27-minute showers certainly helps the district too.
But you know what I'm saying? An average residence is more than
Yeah.
one person.
And an apartment building.
Point well taken.
Water meter.
I know my team's listening. I think that's a great suggestion.
That, and thank you for the recurring credit card payments. That's a big
Well,
step forward. I understand
He's
that.
not here, so I was going to call that the Dave Craig
I understand
friend.
how tough that is.
Yeah.
That is.
You do.
So thank you.
You and I have consulted when in your role at the treasurer's office, and we also wanted to let it kind of sink in a little bit after we enabled recurring or electronic check payments. and we didn't get as big a move back to recurring credit cards as we might. But welcome, any customer, welcome. It's there and it's ready. And
It's better to get it successful in small
Yep.
bites than it is a big failure.
Yep.
So thank you.
You bet. You're welcome. Thanks for the push on those.
Mark, I have several things that you touched on that I'd like to ask you about or explore. The work from home policy, you said it's being developed right now. Is that something that has to be approved by this board, or will you bring it to us to review it or approve it? Is it require approval? Because it certainly is a curious subject, work from home. Who gets to, who doesn't, why, and the benefits of it.
My answer would be no, it doesn't. That would just be the same as our, showing up at 8 or showing up at 9. And but will we bring it to you to talk to you? Yes, I'll do that today or tomorrow if you'd like. We're in a position where we can talk about it. I'm asking for your support. This is I don't want to underestimate this topic. And trust me, I get feedback from a lot of employees. I've opened the door and, you get what you ask for. And it doesn't bode or sit that well with field folks that it isn't really something to their advantage. I'm saying we will be able to do some things for them that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise that'll make their life better, I think.
And one of the reasons I'm very interested, and I didn't think we'd have to approve it.
Yeah.
But, we spent a lot of money and bought this beautiful building.
Sure.
And one of the reasons we bought this building was to get access to conference rooms and people working and interacting together. And we have a great building that we bought for that purpose. And then to work from home, I understand the benefits and I understand how other employees, retention and everything, but I just want to know how we balance that.
I'm going to say most people will be working in the buildings. This isn't everybody's working from home that works in the back. It's not even close to that.
And for field services, I think it's great that, drivers can go home, take their truck at home at night and everything, then they don't have to go back to the warehouse and go back and forth, drive there and get in a truck and drive out. I think that's awesome. And I see trucks in driveways at home, and I think that's great. But I just want to balance what we did as a board and as a company, building and renovating this beautiful building.
Sure. If we could turn the clock back, I'm not sure what we'd do different, but we might have done something different.
I think we got a great deal, and I think you walk down the hall, you walk in that lunchroom, you go, wow, what a beautiful asset this is. And, if I had a building like this to work in my career, it'd have been great. So, but I also know that people work from home. Just sitting here this morning during the board meeting, we asked a couple questions, and Stephanie asked for somebody to help out, and boom, the person on Zoom popped in and got it. It's the technology, and this board has met, through the technology and Zoom as well, and it's very functional. And maybe that's the role of the world, but then I want to think strategically about this building,
So everything's a double-edged sword, and good news, bad news, when this hit, we had our technology in a position with infrastructure off-site. We were able to send everyone home almost like that. I'm sure Sue will say, well, not quite like that, but it was almost like that. Some other companies never did get home because of their technology. Ours was current, modern, and the bad news, the employees understand that contrary to what anyone believes, the work got done, and in some cases where we measure it to the nit, like the call center, the statistics went up. Almost to the point where I talking to a CSR or a customer service rep last week, they want to get back in because it's hard to just take those calls all day long, every day with and this particular one doesn't have a large family, no one in the house. They want to be able to get up and walk around and talk, and then your statistics go down a little bit, but that's okay. So we enabled that right away, and they got a taste of it. And you think of the parent with children, and there are reasons where this can really work, but the work will be managed. And if it didn't work, and I know those that criticize saying people aren't working, which is not true, it's a management problem. It's not a work from home problem. I get it, and I think most people will be in the office anyway, and I'd love to review it with you. But Have you ever heard the term, and I've worked, I've worked outside for part of my career too. I was on a sewer crew in Lincoln when I was younger. I had a lot of people that I worked with in the field that said, I don't ever want to be chained to a desk. Have you ever heard that term?
Oh, yeah.
This helps to break that, and I try to say, well, you would not want to do that, but if you want to do that, the chain's not as strong as it was. That's kind of how I look at this. This is really, a benefit for those that are chained to a desk that haven't been able to do that, and it's not as important for Mark, but if I'm a single mother with a couple of kids, this can really be something.
Right.
To
And I
enhance,
agree.
it breaks a barrier. We talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Equity is more things than just, what we talk. It's equity is trying to have a career with your hand tied behind your back. Maybe it's your choice or your fault, but it's hard to have a career and a family, and then I don't think it's going to be everybody at home like you. Well, it's not going to be, because we're not going to allow that.
Right.
It's a pretty good policy, and I'd love to share it with you.
And I'm just an old guy, and I have a hard time getting used to technology and all the changes, but I see the benefits of, like you said, a single mother or somebody like that, or some teachers teaching remotely from home.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of benefits for it, but it just, I get torn between reality and potential,
Yeah, or even a field person that has a doctor appointment that can do training for 3 hours to go to the appointment. I mean, there's some advantages.
There's a lot of it. And that's
Yeah.
why I know you guys are studying it and everything. I'm just intrigued. I don't think I have to approve it, but I'm just curious. Another quick question. If people move back into the office, like you say,
They already have.
Are you thinking of getting some catering service for lunch?
Oh, haven't talked about that yet. Every time I walk in the lunchroom, I think about it, but I'm glad we didn't start one up 2 years ago, I guess.
I know, because I went in and got some water today, and I look around, got screens, got all the windows, got the tables. What a great place to sit and visit for a little bit.
Yeah, we have some great ideas, and that would be our employee resource groups will have. Director Howard.
Thank you, and thank you, Tim. I want to say I, for one, appreciate that you're looking at the option of people working from home. I mean, you couldn't have described me more perfectly than years ago as a widow with 2 children going out on a horribly stormy day, hoping we would safely get to daycare and to work. Options are good, and I understand there's situations and decisions to be made, but I really appreciate that you're looking at that option. And I think it's important for retention, as you were describing earlier, retention and getting in wonderful people to work here, that they know you're looking at this, and we're moving forward to try to more address the needs of people and their complex lives. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for your support. And if you look at job boards now, Monster and all those, or even career sites, you can keyword search remote, and there are people that they'll just move on if it's not a possibility.
And I hope my comments are not that I oppose it. I think it's great you were looking at it. I'm just curious what it is.
I'm old-fashioned too, and I've had some talks with several of my colleagues. Mr. Kavanaugh?
Well, I forgot what I was going to say, but regarding what Gwen said, there's some savings to be had by not using family sick leave.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And if you have someone at home that qualifies for a family sick leave day, you can still work at home and not have a wasted day. So as a general rule, come into work, but there are some options as a result of this, so that might be one of them. So.
And not getting other people sick. And I want to put in a plug for our managers from the vice presidents all the way down. We've had a lot of discussion, and this policy is their policy, not Mark's policy or not necessarily HR's policy. It's been a lot of, and they're responsible for making sure it works, and I trust that they will. I've never been more confident in the team but I've been at it for a little over 4 years in this role now, so. Mr. Begley?
Thanks for the presentation, Mark. And I just want to address all the great work that's been done from top to every employee in the district. But I think let's keep in perspective the times we're living through right now. The Great Resignation. In the month of March, there was yet another record set for people leaving their current employer and going on to find new employment elsewhere. And the district does a great job providing wages and benefits that are very appealing. But let's make sure we keep our eye on the ball with recruiting and retention efforts in this incredibly volatile time that we're living. And as I mentioned, the district's always provided great benefits and great wages, but it changes on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. So with all these great, with the great vision that's been presented and the great projects that we have on the horizon, it's only as good as the people who are doing that work, the execution of that. So we have negotiations coming up next year. We have 200 plus SPAs. So Bonnie and HR do a great job, but I just want to make sure that we always are mindful of the potential turnover. We have a number of employees who are preparing for retirement here at the district, so there will be natural turnover. But I just want to make sure that we continue to provide as competitive a wage and benefit structure as we can to bring in those talented recruits that we'll need to continue on the great work here.
Thank you, Mr. Begley. Not only recruiting, but you mentioned retention. And I believe that M.U.D. has great benefits, but other companies, because of the great resignation, are enhancing their benefits, and the gap is we aren't going to have this big, and it's I agree. I know what you're saying, and I agree we need to keep our eye on the ball. And a benefit like remote, let's say one person is looking at one company with pretty darn good benefits, hypothetically us, and another one with really decent, like a lot of the companies in Omaha. The remote will trump everything else for that mindset.
Absolutely. And to accentuate the many positive things the district offers, a defined benefit pension with a 95% funding. 97%. Yeah, I stand corrected. That's the best pension going in Omaha, or I would argue in any community, with a dwindling number of defined benefit pensions. So that's a competitive advantage that we have, and we'll continue to advertise that, I know, in years to come.
And getting that across to a person at the beginning of their career, you almost think, are you really not hearing what I'm saying? Well, no, they're not.
Right, yeah.
Thank you.
You can look at the city of Omaha, or the fire department, their pensions and everything. They have to look at ours and just be so envious, but it's a result of a lot of hard work and dedication of this board, to commit that. Mark, I want to change subjects. I got a couple others. The polar vortex, you mentioned that. I mentioned to Jim here a little bit ago that, your monthly report shows our monthly rates and everything. Then there's a note. And Black Hills and Mid-American customers are still paying a monthly surcharge for that polar vortex that occurred a year and a half ago. And it's going to be another year and a half before that surcharge goes away. M.U.D. customers have no surcharge. We covered all the costs, and you covered all our demand with our LNG, propane, and northern storage, and our peak shaving. And our customers came out of that, you said, saved $100 million. And I just want to say thank you to you and your team for your strategic planning in getting ready for a vortex like that. We came through that smelling like a rose, and we can't forget that.
Thank you.
Another topic I have two more, Jack. Cybersecurity.
Yes, sir.
I have to tell you, I have been hearing more and more from our ratepayers and customers. What are you doing about cybersecurity? And I tell them some of the things we are doing, but I would ask that we enhance somehow our ratepayer communication and tell the ratepayers what we are doing that we can tell them without divulging any security things. But I would like to increase our education to the ratepayers about cybersecurity. We have that triangle reliability, and what happens if one goes out? Well, we got two others, and everything. I think we need to communicate that to the ratepayers, because with the Ukrainian war and all that, and threats of cyber attacks, I've been asked, what are you guys doing to make sure we have our water and gas service, I just think our education could step up.
We'll figure out a way to make that palatable where we could do that. I have a whole list of things we're doing. The most important thing, if you're talking to people, is we have multi-factor authentication. Some companies still don't. When I get onto my computer, my cell phone, I have to do something on it to say that. That's such a fundamentally basic thing. That's probably what happened with the pipeline that went to the East Coast, just not having a fundamental blocking and tackling. So however we can do it to get confidence without breaching, we'll do that.
Okay, and one last thing, bear with me. You said in your strategic plan, you're going to roll it out in 2023. You have a strategic plan today. What's going to happen in 2023 that's not happening today?
We have been, just like back in my days through the 90s and the 2000s, all it seemed like we ever talked about was Platte West. And we had a really good plan on Platte West, and it was great, and we built it. Right now, all I seem to talk about is water infrastructure and a water master plan. We think we need a more comprehensive umbrella plan for the whole district, and stay tuned. I think you'll be happy with it, and I think you'll see some things in there that are no real big surprises. We just want to institutionalize a plan. I didn't have one handed to me, and there should have been one. There was one back in the 80s that I saw when I came on the board, but it wasn't really what I would have considered a master plan. So good points. We'll have more discussion on that.
I want to compliment you guys because I do think you have a plan that you're executing every day, every month.
Yeah.
You know, infrastructure, gas and water, you know, all the stuff you're doing, you have a plan. And that's why I hate to see that you're going to roll out a strategic plan in 2023 because you have one today.
Well, what we're doing now will be part of that. And our managers and directors and VPs have plans and roadmaps, and you're really just pulling it all together. So
that's all I have, Jack.
Thank you.
One final comment. I really appreciate that you're receptive and open. I've learned in doing this sort of political stuff is that one of the most important things to people, be it employees or the general public, is that they feel you heard them. Mm-hmm. And I think M.U.D. does a really good job of that. They don't expect you to solve all their problems, but they do want to be listened to. It's a simple thing, but it makes a big difference. And then my friend here, Tim, has that very tasty suggestion.
Oh.
Push the button.
What I was going to say earlier that I forgot was that, like the city-county building, when they have food vendors come in, or did, a different one each day. Like every Monday, they would have Mexican food, Tuesday, Chinese. That would work really well here if you could get companies to bring their catering business, set it up, and then you charge the employees, of course, commensurately. And they seem to be making enough money on it to sustain it.
And I would think a vendor would see that kitchen and go, wow, that's a great place.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I think we'll be back and we're able to talk about, and you know, Metro has that culinary institute, and we're pretty excited about that. We're glad you're asking us about that, so we don't have to ask you.
And then after a board meeting, we can all go have lunch.
Beautiful.
I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't have to be the same vendor every day,
agreed.
you know, because I don't know if you'd get anybody to do that.
No, I don't think so either.
Okay, there will be no closed session.
Correct.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Howard,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Bagley, Bren, Frost,
Aye, yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Do we have to have a quorum
To adjourn.
You have a
We have one.
There are four of us.
Yeah.